Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. If everybody can quiet down, please. We're going to call the meeting to order. It's 4 o'clock, and I welcome all of you here today. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach. It's Tuesday, October the 25th, 4 p.m. All council members are present. The town manager is here, the town attorney, the town clerk, and of course all of you. Thanks for coming. So before we get underway, I just want to remind everybody, as we promised last week at the meeting, we have these passes that anyone who came off the beach and plans to go back this evening, you can grab one of these passes on the way out, and that'll get you back on the island. All right? Who's going to be passing those out from the town? Yatsia and the town clerk, Amy Baker, right there. Okay, we're going to start with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather today as our community with our friends and neighbors. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the weather that we're having to help in our recovery. We thank you for all the other gifts you've bestowed on us, not the least of which are our friendship, our sense of community, our tolerance, our patience. All of these gifts come from you, and we thank you for those. We pray that we will continue in that spirit, that you will continue to bless us in our recovery, in our time of need. Continue to bless us and bestow your grace upon us, that we can move forward as a community, as friends and neighbors, to do the work that we have to do. And we're going to do all of this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda? It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. The next item is public comment. Town clerk.
First up will be Raphael Gnurk, and after Raphael will be Karen Woodson.
Good afternoon. My name's Raphael Gnurk. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, thank you for all you're doing. I would like to comment on permitting. I urge you, I sincerely beg you, to look into streamlining the permitting process in any way you can. People want to rebuild and are hindered by red tape issues. I know the permitting department is able and they are doing all they can, but some things seems to be just not working smoothly. An example, many meter sockets and main panels were submerged during the storm. People will need them to be replaced. The type of work requires a permit. I looked through the permit portal and I looked at each and every one. And as of noon today, 57 permit applications for this type of work have been put into your system. Replace main panel, replace meter socket. This is the list of the permit numbers. So far, 57 property owners have found an electrician that is willing and ready to work and to get them back on power. Many more will surely follow. Do you know how many?
Excuse me, Raphael, 1 second. I'm going to ask everybody, please, if you can just take your phones out and silence them right now, please. I'm going to give you all a second to do that. Everybody that has to do that, it's really distracting when someone's trying to speak. Okay. Okay, Raphael.
So these are the 57 permits for replacement of main panels and meters. Do you know how many of these have been approved? None. Zero. nil. They've all been rejected. Rejected because they are missing two documents: the owner acknowledgement and the qualifier acknowledgement. Two documents that are nowhere to be found. It says nowhere on your website that they are required. So these contractors, they submit the trade permit and they don't know that this is needed. So this slows everything down very much. Another example. During last Thursday's town council meeting, Daphne stated that no notarizations are needed for permit applications for the time being. This year is permit number 222444 that was submitted today and rejected today with the following reason. Please submit the owner acknowledgement signed by the property owner and notarized, and the qualifier acknowledgement signed by the contractor's license holder and notarized to buildingpermits@fmbgov.com. Why is that? How can that be? What's the rule here? So again, I beg you to take all measures you can to make getting a permit easier, more transparent, and quicker. Maybe make a cheat sheet for the contractors, something really easy that they can, if you say you have got an electric permit, maybe waive the requirement for the owner acknowledgement and the qualifier acknowledgement altogether for the time being. I don't know how that legally looks. Maybe just waive through permits that are one-to-one replacements of meters, of meter sockets, main panels, roofs, people just trying to repair stuff.
Thank you, Raphael.
That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming.
Karen Woodson. After Ms. Woodson is Jewel Patch.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you know I typically don't interrupt citizen comments, but I want the gentleman to know that before I came over here today, I talked to Daphne and in fact made sure that she understood that all her staff to be instructed to waive those things. So you have a very good idea, and we were thinking the same way, and that's in progress. And we may have an employee who may not have gotten the message yet, but we will follow up tomorrow morning and make sure they have it.
Okay, and I'm going to ask everybody to please refrain from clapping after each speaker or booing, for that matter, whichever.
Just ask if there's anything, you just raise your hand.
All that does is prolong this meeting. So please refrain from that. You do me a big favor. Thank you very much. Karen?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. I'm Karen Woodson. I'm a resident of the beach. I have two asks today. We all know there's an election coming up, and we all know we're going to have at least one new council member, maybe two, but for sure one, which will probably change some of the thought direction of the council. So I just ask that if there's any major forward-thinking decisions to be made, that they at least, for the sake of the citizens, be put on hold for 2 weeks. Something that it has to be made, absolutely make it, but there could be a different direction and could be a different future for our decision making, and I would just ask that we move with caution. The second ask is next Tuesday is election day, and it's a Tuesday, and the island is closed. So could there be a pass for next Tuesday that everyone can get off and on the island as they wish for voting purposes or whatever they need to do that day? So those are my two asks. Thank you.
Jewel Patch, and after Jewel is Heather Reagan.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jewel Paddock, it's a pleasure to see you again. I don't want to be condescending, but the primary purpose for a city government is to protect both personhood and property. And in my opinion, some of your policies are counterproductive to both. I've stated so on numerous occasions to both your mayor, some members of the council, and your city manager. In that regard, your current access to the island is resulting in significant harm to both property owners and to personhood, and that needs to change and needs to change immediately. I guess I'll ask the one question, if any of the members of the council or the mayor want to answer. What is the amount of hours you're currently restricting people from their home, their property, and their businesses? Any idea? What percentage of a week that they can't access? Any idea?
Sir, we don't answer the question.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Well, that's not surprising, just because, you know, it's sort of the way I've been responded to by the city previously, for those that don't know. But the bottom line is your current limitations on access to the community, the beach, the homes, the property, and the businesses is 75%. 75% of a week cannot be accessed to your property, your business, and your homes. That means only 25% of a week you can. That's unreasonable. I mean, some restrictions are perhaps good. I mean, the night curfew, maybe people don't need to be working all night. I don't know. Maybe utility workers and city workers and debris removers should be working 12-hour shifts at night when people are off the island. But I can tell you one thing, 25% access to your home, your property, your business is unjust, it's unreasonable, and it's harmful. Your goal is to maximize people's personal property interests and their interests in their private lives, and you're minimizing it right now. You're giving 3/4 of the time to nothing, air. That's when contractors and people of their homes and their businesses want to be on their property. 75% of the week is denied to them. It has to change.
Heather Reagan, and after Heather is Jesse Schmid.
First, I know the difficult.
Pull it down, please.
What are you saying, I'm a shorty? First, I'd like to thank all of you. I know it's a difficult time, and you guys are sacrificing that percentage of time. So, I am foremost a resident, and secondly, a business owner on Fort Myers Beach. I own Mom's Home Cooking, and I'm the official, or I'm sorry, I get nervous. The original owner of Heavenly Biscuit. I think that the best way to, and the most productive thing to do would be to bring trailers or food trucks and food trailers, in someone's case like me, to the beach and allow us to have that there, and that we could work out of those. And I think only also that people that were in business when Ian hit should be the people that are able to do that. And I would say maybe put a sunset clause in there, 5 years, something like that would be good, in case we, of course, with the permitting and the inability to find contractors. There's plenty of contractors that are just loaded with work. So that would be a good opportunity for all of us to get back to work, bring our economy back, and move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Heather.
Jesse Schmid, and after Jesse will be Albert Dambrose.
Jesse Schmid. How much longer will FEMA be picking up debris, and where does it need to be placed to be picked up for sure? Second of all, permits. I've had permits in for 11 months, 6 months before they was even reviewed. Now it's been another 5 months, and we keep getting one rejection back at a time. Then a month later, we'll send it back and we'll get the rejection. Then a month later, we'll get another rejection. Then another rejection. Can we get all rejections at one time? So when we send a permit in, if you have 6 things that need to be fixed, can we fix all 6, please, at one time? That way, when we send it back in, we have permits issued in a timely fashion and not waiting a year for permits. And this has been something that I've addressed before, several times. Another thing, sinkholes, all up and down the island. What is the path to fill in the sinkholes? Are we allowed to? Are we not allowed to? I was told we have to get a drainage plan and site plan and a whole great big long list of 20 different things to be able to fill in a sinkhole. I think that's absolutely ridiculous at this point. If we can't bring in the correct sand, which I've talked to Chad about, at least 4 or 5 or 6 loads to protect our property at this point. We're not asking to build them up 10 feet. We're not asking to change the elevation. We just want to fill in sinkholes so people don't get hurt on properties. Another thing, all of us want to get power restored to our houses. When we go to the portal, and my contractor has RJR Homes, which he has done several times, to fill out permits. Last week, 4 of them was voided immediately after he sent them in. No reason why, but they was just voided. You know, when we send in permits, we need to get, like I said, if there's something we need to correct, we need all corrections at one time, the first time. Not drag it out for 11 months for an elevated swim pool. It's ridiculous. Another thing, like this gentleman just said, residents can't come on Monday or Tuesday. I have equipment. I have an excavator. I have a dozer, 2 brand new skid loaders, a roll-off truck. I'm here to work. I have several businesses on the island and 6 beachfront homes. And my boys went to school here. I'm here to work, and I want to work. Let us work. It's not fair that we can't get on and work.
Thank you, Jesse. Next.
Albert Dambrose, and after Albert will be Jackie Lezak.
Good afternoon. For the record, for council, my name is Albert Dambrose. I'm with Studio D Architect, licensed architect in the state of Florida. Our business is based in Fort Myers. We've worked on projects throughout Southwest Florida as well as projects on the beach. I've been in an industry for 30 plus years. I've been doing this for quite some while. I understand the differences between each jurisdictions. What I'm trying to say here is I'm here to help and give you some direction and advice what other jurisdictions have been doing that make things go a little bit smoothly. So number one, I think the biggest issue is finding clarity on the building appraisal of the building values. This is the letter everyone's been looking at online. There's a lot of discussion online about which numbers to be used. Letting you know right now, factually verified by floodplain managers and head building departments of Lee County, City of Fort Myers, and I've reached out to other ones too to verify because we have clients all over Southwest Florida that we're helping them move forward. Lee County has verified they are using the higher number of the market value, verified 3 times. I reached out to City of Fort Myers floodplain manager, Brent Brewster, and Robert Ward, plan reviewers. They're using actually 2 numbers to make the numbers even higher. The purpose is to help people. When I spoke to Lee County the day after, or 2 days after the hurricane, the head plan reviewers and the head chief of inspections, they actually said the goal was to get people back into their homes and not create a housing issue around Southwest Florida. So that's the first thing I want to talk about because this is the first part of the whole 50% equation. It is a complicated process, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It's literally, in my profession, it's the back of my hand. It's steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It gives everyone a direction and a route to how to plan the future. And some of these decisions they're going to make are going to still take 2 and 3 months to move forward on those decisions. But they need to know the information clarity right now. So every day I search the Town of Fort Myers Beach Facebook profile, and things got to be in social media. The website is not the best website ever. I'll tell you that right now. It's not. Social media, TikTok, Facebook, whatever it is, an airplane going across the beach saying we're going to be using these high values or this specific line item that's in the property appraiser, end of discussion, everyone at least have a direction forward. I know people are going to still have questions about the details of it, how these things are executed, but we as architects, structural engineers, design professionals in the area are here to help. We're willing to help people out and understand and navigate this complicated process, but again, it doesn't have to be. Just to give you an example, Lee County, I've advised 2 of my previous clients and new clients, and we're not even charging for this stuff because we're trying to get people back in there. What we've helped people do is tell them what to do, the process, how Lee County is doing it. Again, if you're off island, that is Lee County, unincorporated Lee County. And people are getting permits the same day to go in. Client of mine, an island park, 8 foot, 9 foot of water, complete flood damage, went in there, showed them the letter, they verified it, and they used it. And one last point, I know I went over my time a little bit, is the cost of repair or improvement. If you look into what Lee County does, They make things simple without providing cost breakdowns with drywalls and all that stuff. This is what they use, a cost a square foot. $60 a square foot to do renovations on the interior. $30 was just created during a hurricane if you had flood water damage 4 feet or less.
Okay,
This is
sir.
what we're giving
Okay, sir.
clients to help.
Rep-
Thank you for your time. Again,
Thank
I'm
you
here
very
to help.
much. And there'll be more discussion later on about those two values you were talking about. Madam Clerk?
Jackie Lezak. After Jackie is Amy Lowry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jackie Lezak. I'm a beach resident, 189 Sable Drive. Good afternoon, counselors, town staff, friends and family, and community members. I'm here this morning, or this afternoon, not only as the president of the Fort Myers Beach Chamber and to give you an update, but also as a community member, a resident, and a business owner. As the president of the chamber, I wanted to give you a quick update. As most of you may know, our chamber building is gone. 2450 Estero is a grass lot, and all that's left were the really crappy stairs that were on the back of the building that nobody would use, shockingly. So despite this, I want you to know that myself and my chamber team have not stopped since moment one. We are all working remotely. Sherry's in Kentucky, Doug is in India, Mary is up in Venice, and I'm working from here. And we have not stopped. We have attended press conferences. I've gone to roundtable meetings. I've been invited to speak with the governor. I've been invited to speak with the president. And I'm doing all of this on all y'all's behalf. Not only on mine, but on yours. Most importantly, on yours and on the town's. This chamber is dedicated and committed to helping this town rebuild, restore, grow, and enjoy the renaissance that was within our grasp. I want you to know that we have resources. On our chamber website, we are updating it multiple times a day with the latest information that we're getting from the town, the county, the state, and the federal government. Those resources are available to everyone, residents, businesses, guests, workers, it doesn't matter. This chamber is serving everyone. I also want to know you to know that we are going to fight to get our businesses back, because our businesses are what are going to bring back our guests, and our guests are going to drive our local economy so that we can all come home and live on our island that we all love so much. So if you have a question, my cell phone is available to anybody. I'm available to anyone at any time. Call, ask, and if I don't know the answer, I know plenty of people that I can reach out to who probably do. I know you guys in front of me have a thankless task. I know that you're getting beat up pretty solidly every day, so am I. So please know that you're not alone. I know the town staff is doing the best they can with the limited resources that they have, but I also know that we've got an incredible team of professionals that are surrounding us right now from the state, the county, and from the federal government who are looking to help us. I ask that the town accept that help and use it to benefit all of us. As a business owner, my beloved Sea Gypsy is gone. 1698 Estero is also a sand lot with the crappy ramp that nobody would walk up because it was so dangerous. Go figure. So there we have it. But thank you for being here today. Thank you for all the community members for coming out. This is our chance to regrow and to take on that renaissance that we looked forward to. Go grab it and let's do it together. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Amy Lowry, and after Amy is Jane Plummer.
Good afternoon. It's been a rough week. We tore down our house Sunday, what was left of our house. And unfortunately, the town came by today and said we needed a permit to do so. But according to the website, no permits are being issued, and we can remove any we can do minor demolition if it's causing a safety and health hazard, which our home was. As you all know, we've already had 3 police reports for people who have been on our property stealing, going into our home. Rick and I would not even go into what was left of the one front wall and half of our house that was left. But yet people were walking in there. It was a definite safety hazard, no question about it. So we tore it down. Now I'm being told we needed a permit, but the website says no permits are issued. So what am I supposed to do? The gentleman, and I don't know who it was that spoke with our contractor today that was there, said 20 people from the town will be coming tomorrow to address this issue. My husband will be there. As you all know, Rick, he's kind of a hothead. I told them to please call if he's escorted off by the police, so I can get bail money and get him out. I don't know what to do, so we need some direction. The other thing also is we have 180 yards of dirt being delivered tomorrow because we have a 20 by 40 by 6 foot deep hole on both the north and the south side of our house where our cars were buried in there. They were what caused, unfortunately, the erosion underneath our home for it to collapse during the storm. Our garage has been deemed structurally sound, and we are in hopes that we will be able to keep that. However, without being able to shore it on the north side, we're going to have issues that could prevent us from being able to keep that. And as you all know, everybody knows my garage that Rick designed. We'd love to be able to keep that and incorporated that in the design of the new home. So I need some direction. My second question that I have, or issue, I looked at the agenda, and I applaud you all for wanting to put RVs, motorhomes, whatever, on our sites while we rebuild. We would love to be able to do that ourselves. Talking with contractors and our contractor, they don't think 18 months is a reasonable amount of time, nor do we. I can't see with the demand for concrete that there already was prior to Ian, that there's going to be wait lists just to try and get the rebuilding process done. I'd love to know I was going to be in a home in 18 months back on the island, but I don't see that happening any more than anybody else does. Realistically, I think if you all could change that to 2 years, and obviously with guidelines, permits issued, we're allowed to be there. As soon as the CO is issued, we're allowed to be in our home and they have to be vacated. So just something for your consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Jane Plummer. After Jane will be John Cameron.
Silence your phone, please.
Hi, my name is Jane Plummer. I'm a resident at 340 Fairweather Lane, and I'm also the chair of the LPA, and I'm here with both hats asking 2 questions.
Pull your mic down just a little.
Okay, my first question is, there's so much confusion on the 50% rule through all the residents, through all the evaluations on the tax roll. Nobody knows where to look. These homeowners are spending tons of money getting their electric and their water and different things back on, and cleaning and doing all this stuff. They need to know whether they can rebuild. I mean, it's just difficult sitting there spending money going, I don't know whether I'll be able to rebuild. I'm asking if the LPA and the town council could meet together, have these people that are specialists come and talk to us, work on having a path that anybody would be able to go, fill in the blank, oh, yay, I get to keep my house. Otherwise, it's just mass confusion, and they're getting second letters on structurals that have been done, and here they thought they were done. So that's something I think we need to address as a town for our residents. So that's my LPA chair hat. So on another question I have is, I understand that FEMA has new regulations coming out November 1st, and I'm wondering if we will get, as residents, time before those new, we don't know what those are going to be and how that's going to affect us in rebuilding. If we will get an extension like we do on our taxes, to a date late in the future, so that we can get our questions answered on what we believe we know about FEMA, instead of taking on new requirements and restrictions that none of us understand at this point. And I think the key thing is, we can't get a better rating with FEMA. So we don't have any of the requirements that give us a better rating. So I think what we need to concentrate on are the residents that live here and that are our town, and let them get back in their houses however we can, not putting FEMA first, but the residents first, because we can't get a better rating. Thank you. And any time would be good for any of the LPA members, whatever works for y'all. Thanks.
John Cameron.
Hello again. Last week, we had a conversation about permits. Seems like that's still the main issue on everybody's mind, certainly is on mine. I have 2 properties off island just down the road here that were both affected by floodwaters. My water and electricity have been on for about a week and a half. There was no structural permit required. There was no electrical inspection required. It's just on. They came, they changed the meter. I flicked the circuit breaker, everything works. That's nice. The problem with all of this is that we don't have access to a lot of contractors. They won't come on the island because of the rules that have been instituted by this town. You can solve this problem today by simply saying, you know what, we're just going to follow Lee County's rules. Or since that's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. You get rid of all the permits that are required, that are adding to the cost of not only the builders, but of permit holders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Lee County has the facility, Lee County has the manpower, and we don't. You don't. And we need to do this. You guys need to make a commitment to the residents here, so that there's no net, so that they can live in the homes that they have, and don't have to worry about this 50% rule, which will be driven up by all of this permitting, by the fact that only certain contractors are willing to work on here, supply and demand. It's basic. Just do it.
Amen.
That's all I have signed up.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak that hasn't signed up here? Yes, ma'am, in the back. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Yeah.
Ladies first, you know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Chivalry is not dead. With contractors and him talking.
Your name for the record?
Diana McDonald, and I'm a property manager. On Fort Myers Beach, I have managed over 330-something condos, units. When it comes to the contractors, I'm finding that they don't want to come out onto the island because of the power and the water and the lack of those materials. You know, if they can't get out there to do the work that they need to do. My question is with FP&L, I heard that they make the regulations on how this is, on the materials and parts to be supplied. They have to be new when you have these the electrical engineer structural inspections. So my question is can you speak to FP&L, because I don't have a contact there, and maybe when Sandy hit in Staten Island, PSE&G gave them a year. They allowed them to use refurbished parts and materials while they waited for the other parts to come in, because the problem is we can't get the materials. We're like literally looking in Mexico and Canada to get materials to get these associations and communities back up and running. So is there a way that someone can speak with them on our behalf, or do something, or give me a contact to move forward with that? That would be great. And then the last question I have is why if last week I remember you saying that we're bringing in all these workers from the north and everywhere to help with the permitting process for these things. Why are we and these homeowners restricted to just licensed Florida contractors? Like, you guys are bringing outsourcing. And I understand like the first right of refusal for Florida contractors. I do, and I think that they deserve it and they earn it. But we're like 4 weeks in now, and we're still not able to get contractors out here. So why can't we, I'm a property manager, I was up north, so why can't we outsource at this point to bring some of these guys back down and help us? Those are my questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, Mike Markham, 15 Palmview, Fairview Isles. Again, the permitting process, we need to streamline that. But my real question and confusion is around the 50% rule, but it's kind of like, how do we get there? How do we report that? Is there a form? Do you have to have a licensed contract, contractor give that quote? or can a homeowner put together his own bids through individual contractors? I've already got an HVAC quote, I've got an electrical quote, I've got a garage door quote, and I've got a drywall quote. And every contractor I talk to says, man, you're ahead of most people I talk to. But when I try to find a general contractor, everyone I talk to, they say, man, I'm 14 months, 2 years out. He says, I'd like to help you, but I really can't. Is this permissible for the homeowner to kind of manage this as a general and let the individual contractors submit for the permits? And how do you get to this 50% number as far as, is there a document out there that tells us, okay, drywall is X amounts per square feet, floor tile is X amount per square feet? We need some help. We need to get there quick.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'll just answer that for you, since you're the last here. Just hold on 1 second, sir. I want to answer this man's question. There is the information about that, Mike. There's a packet that we have available, and it has a worksheet in it that goes right down all the trades, and it's a checklist per se, what you need, blah, 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 blah. So that's available. We have those. You can take a look at it. We have the hard copy, and we also have it online. So that's available.
So does it have to be a licensed contractor? Owner builder.
That I don't know the answer to, but we can answer that question shortly.
I talked to a friend of mine up in the Panhandle who went through the last hurricane went up through there, and he said they made exceptions up there and allowed homeowners to kind of take control and do a lot of things.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get the answer before the meeting's
All right,
over.
thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Come up to the microphone, please.
Ron Bednock, 210 Sterling Avenue. Just a quick question on last Thursday, we thought we heard that there was not going to be a cost for permits, for the electrical permit to hook up. So I'm speaking for my neighbor. He put in for the permit and was charged $200. So that's my neighbor down the street. So if I could get that answer before I leave, is there a charge or is there not? That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay. And then the second thing is I got to go along with everybody else on this Monday, Tuesday thing. There's real hardship happening to the residents that, say, a doctor's appointment and then they can't go to it. Us residents are at our homes working. We're not out taking pictures and videos.
I understand.
We need Monday and Tuesday if we need supplies. Again, like everybody else, let us come to our homes on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Okay. I'm going to address that later on, but just hang in there, okay? Right. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Hold on 1 second. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Doring. I'm a registered professional engineer. I live at 5394 Palmetto Street. I had a property at 5771 Estero Boulevard on the Bay Side. Unfortunately, it got washed away. I'm staying in my home. I don't have running water. I don't have electric. I do have a generator. And I've met with contractors, electrical contractors specifically, and my home has a pool, and it requires high amperage. It also has electric heat and so forth. It's a pretty good sized home. And he's saying there's a nationwide shortage on meter bases for what I need. I need either a single 400 amp meter base or two 200 amp meter bases, and neither one is available probably for a year. So I'm asking, cannot we just get a temporary service permit and just put a 100 amp meter base in there and drop down to one single GFI so I could plug in something and don't have to run the generator, which makes noise for neighbors, also for myself. And the other issue is I don't have running water, so that means I flush my toilet with pool water, which is sort of smelly. But I see a lot of streets are available now to get water. Now, I don't consider water to be a safety issue. I can understand electric is a safety issue where you need to have that done properly, with inspections and licensed contractors. I can see that, but why is water a safety issue? As I understand it now, you have to get first a structural engineer to survey the home and say it's okay. And then you have to get electrical service, and then you can first get water. Why can't we get water now? Water is not a safety issue. I mean, if it's no good, it's going to leak. So then you fix the leak and you're back in business. But at least you don't have to use smelly pool water to flush your toilet. And I also heard another lady say that there is a long time to get certain parts, electrical, like my problem. So can't you help us get some kind of a temporary service going so we don't have to run generators? And the final issue I wanted to address is the access. I agree that limiting access to Americans to access their home on certain days of the week, that's not the way to go. Now, right now, I took a chance because I called the sheriff this morning and I asked, if I leave the beach, can I get back on? He said no. And then he hung up on me. And so, now I'm here. I took a chance. I left the beach. So am I going to be able to get back to my home?
Yeah, you are, Paul. You're going to get one of these before you leave.
I hope so. Thank you.
That's going to put you back on the beach.
Thank you very much.
And listen, Paul, the temporary power is on my list of things to discuss today. So
Okay.
hang around, all right?
That's very good.
Okay.
Thank you
for your
very much.
comments. I appreciate it. Leah.
Thanks, Ray. Hi, Leah Gregg, Palermo Circle. And I've been trying diligently for the last week, and I know all of you continuously throw it over to Roger. So frankly, I think many of us are speaking to the wrong group, right? It seems like Roger has a lot of decision-making power throughout this. And like the gentleman that spoke before, I called LIPA as well and spoke to a very, very educated woman that worked for LIPA, and she confirmed that the town of Fort Myers Beach is the taxing authority and will make the decision on what building value to use for the 50% rule. So I'm sure each of you know there's two values on LIPA. It used to be called the tax roll value, which is the higher value for the building, and the current working value, which is substantially lower. Lee County informed me that they are honoring, just like this gentleman said, so I got verification as well, the tax roll value, which is the higher value for the towns under their taxing authority jurisdiction. Our town is the taxing authority for our town. So you make the decision, Roger. 10/18, I obtained my tax roll value letter, which is on the LIPA website, and it showed just a higher value for my building, no other dollar amount. I had to go to look at the other amount, the cost value, which was in a different link. Today that letter changed. It now shows both values, and the value names have changed too. The tax roll value name is now changed to market value, and the current working value is now changed to cost value. And the description changed as well. It states, the chart below you will find the most recent values for the 2022 ad valorem tax roll. These values represent Lee County property appraisers' determination of the value for ad valorem tax properties as of January 2022. But now they add the market value is the value you see on your tax bill, while the cost value represents the cost to build the improvements, less depreciation based on the age of those improvements. So that just came out of the blue, literally. So I've asked, and all I hear from Roger is, I'm going and I'm finding out from Lee County. But Lee County says, it's up to you. You're the taxing authority. So I wish you could have a chance to speak, because I'd love to hear your answers, because the only answer you send me via email is the staff and I are reaching out to Lee County, period. That's it. So that's my first point. If you guys could just get us, we just need to know the number. It's simple. I'm even fine with the lower number, worst case scenario, but just give us a number. And again, I know that comes from Roger. The other thing is, and I know this was brought up at the last meeting, you got to limit access on the island. I was there Sunday with my nephews and their friends. There were so many lookers driving literally 2 miles an hour with their camera out of the window. It was insane. One guy, I was driving northbound, they were driving southbound. There wasn't one car, not one in front of them. And there was literally 30 cars deep, and this guy's videoing. And then you beep your horn, and sometimes they'll even flip you the bird. It's ridiculous. I suggest this. You guys gave us those little purple passes. They're wonderful. You put them right up front. Give us 4. One for us, contractor, adjuster, family, and just let those people on the island. Cops are there anyway. Just please help us with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Hello, my name is Susan Hendricks, and my family has 2 properties, homes on Fort Myers Beach, and they've had the homes since, 43 years, one of the homes. I used to be responsible for public meetings, arranging them in the state of Kentucky, so I'm accustomed to looking at the agendas very carefully and listening to people speak. And when I was reviewing your agenda, like Ms. Woodson, I was absolutely astounded that you would have on your agenda the options for replacing Town Hall at this time. And before I even would consider, if I were sitting in your position, I would have to review my town of Fort Myers Beach budget, and I would have to distribute that budget to every citizen on the beach. I'd like to know where we stand fiscally, and I think everybody here probably has that same interest. And the other thing is, I do support the engineer, the gentleman who spoke about water. My husband and I drove 1,000 miles to get down here. We repacked our car, truck, whatever, several times based on what we thought we might need to come clean and take care of 2 homes down here. Right now, I'm on Pepita Street, brushing sand off 2 driveways, the pool deck, and we haven't even started on the other home, doing everything without water. And I think it's totally ridiculous that the water situation is tied to the electrical and structural inspections. And that's it.
Jerry Kemp, 5698 Estero Boulevard, and we don't have to clean up because there is no house. My question is, are you going to allow temporary trailers on lots so that we can either clean it, get prepared, do the permitting, and start to rebuild? That's my question.
It's on the agenda today, Jerry.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Mr. Murphy. How are you, sir?
Call me Ray.
Ray.
Just speak a little closer.
Robert Koch. I'm down at Laguna Shores. A lot of the things I had on my topic have already been addressed. Permitting is the most important. I've done my own work. We've got new meters. Fortunately, I was able to get a panel. So my neighbor and I both got new panels. Everything that touched salt water has been replaced. I'm at a bottleneck because I want to do an owner builder permit, and the permitting permit process is a bottleneck because we have to go through the contractor to get a permit submitted to the city. So as an owner builder, I've done my own work. I've done my own plumbing work, I've done my own electrical work. Everything's been replaced as per FPL. We asked them. Yet they can't step in until you guys have released the documentation to them to go to the house to set up services. And of course, we can't get water on until you get electrical. So we've got everything in line. I just need the process of permitting opened up to the public to allow us to do our own permitting. I've got a notary, I've got the forms filled out. All I need is just a simple, where do I send it and who's going to sign off on it so I can get my house turned back on.
Okay.
So
I'll bring that up.
all right, very good. Thank you, sir. And another thing, if you don't have the traffic on the beach, the first few days of cleanup, I got stopped every 5 minutes by contractors trying to drum up business. So if we somehow curve that back, it'd be nice as well. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Cliff Gallagher. I have property on Naughty Turn Drive. And thank goodness for the Catholic Church, it knocked most of the surge down before it got to my place.
I heard that, Naughty Turn.
Yeah, and I'd like to address some of the misinformation that was given out by council or members when people were being kept off the beach for 10 days. You weren't allowed to come in and see your property. And The reasoning was that the fire department won't allow it. Well, the fire department's not in charge of declaring a state of emergency. And the reasoning that was given was they're trying to save lives. I understand, but this was a recovery operation, not a rescue operation. And not one of those dead people came back to life. So when you allow people to come on the beach after a major problem such as this, the more eyes you have, the faster the problems get resolved. Then I drove down here in a motorhome from New Jersey, and I parked on my property, and I had to leave to go bury my younger brother in North Alabama, and my son stayed here. He was rousted out of our property by sheriff's deputies and told he was not allowed to stay here. We had sheriff's deputies and state troopers tell us that we weren't allowed to bring a motorhome onto the beach. Where are you going with this motorhome on Fort Myers Beach? Well, I certainly wasn't going to the Red Coconut. I understand what the regulations are for having a property and having a motorhome on it, but this is a special circumstance. I had a toilet, I had fresh water, I had air conditioning, I had everything I needed without having any services from the town. But I was told, you can't bring this on the beach. Finally, I got a hold of Ray Sandelli, and he said, we'll handle this. We'll get this straightened out. You're absolutely allowed to bring it on. But the problem is, not everything got promulgated to the people who are supposed to be regulating. And so one morning, my son drove on to our property, and there were contractors rooting through our property. That needs to stop. Nothing against having Latinos, but when somebody goes out and hires 100 of them to clean up a large condo association, they need to be in control of those people.
Thank you. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up here.
Okay. As others have said, there are problems getting materials. I've got an electrical contractor coming tomorrow from Orlando to tell us what we need to do. I pretty much know what we need to do because my brother-in-law is a general contractor, and he says, well, here's what you need.
All right, Mr. Gallagher, you're going to have to wrap it up now.
Okay.
You can see that you've made your points, and I hear you,
Mhm.
and we're going to answer most of your questions for you here.
All right.
Thank you
Well,
very much. Appreciate
I'll
it.
be here next meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
Gentlemen, I'd just like to address, my name's Marty White. I have multiple properties on the island. I've been here my entire life. I'd like to address the issue of the colored chart that identifies the properties and the destructive nature of the hurricane on the properties. On my street, I got an orange dot on my property. It received 7.5 feet of water. It's a ground level Michigan-built home. There's no damage to the structure. I've had them sign off, engineers sign off on the property. I've taken the drywall out. I'm going to gut the complete house, but I got an orange dot. And the orange dot states, from my understanding, that I need to tear my house down or get a higher appraisal because I exceed the 50% mark. This is what it states in your sheet.
Well,
okay, so let me finish, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Across the street from my house is an elevated 2-story house that also got an orange dot, and their lower level got a damage, but no damage to their upper level, and so that's another one that apparently needs to get torn down, or they need to get an appraiser that brings it up higher. And then there's a house next to them that was just recently built that's got an orange dot that didn't have any damage to it. Nothing upstairs, and downstairs there was nothing downstairs. It's pool damage, pool equipment damage. So this whole, I know of homes that don't have any dots, green dots. Other homes on my street that are the same as my home have green dots and yellow dots. They receive just as much water. So this use, first of all, I don't know who is responsible for that system, but we need more information.
Let me just tell you, there may be some confusion there with the USAR teams in the beginning, the search and rescue people. They were identifying buildings with dots, and they were also putting tags on the. I'm not sure of your situation, but that could be some of the confusion.
Are you aware of this dot system that shows a green dot, a yellow dot, an orange dot, and a red dot?
Well,
is this you, town manager?
No, I'm not Mr. Dot, but I will
I
tell
don't
you.
think that's funny at all. I really don't.
No. The dots were done by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, this is a different story we're getting now.
Okay, well.
They did that pretty quick, huh?
Well, they did that because one of the things that FEMA utilizes to make decisions about how much aid and what types of aid they give a town is by the extent of damages.
Yeah.
So
does the town know about this? I hope everyone here understands what he's talking about here with this 50% rule.
It has
and
nothing
the
to do with
different
the
dot
50
colors
Hang
that are on
on.
your
All
homes.
right,
You better
so-
look into it. Okay?
You want to explain it? Would you like me to?
Yeah, no, I'd like to hear you
Okay,
finish.
so they use that to assess the extent of damages so that they can make certain decisions in Washington and the state with regard to things such as, will FEMA pay for your debris from your house to be removed to the curb, or will they pay for it to be removed from your property? Will FEMA take down your property if you ask them to, and things of that nature.
You know,
can I finish?
if I could address something here for a moment.
Sure.
You know, I went and I got a loan to build my house. Right now I have a $430,000 loan on one of my houses. And, you know, when I got that mortgage, they didn't tell me that, you know, guess what? If this happens, you're going to be left not made whole. You know, I've paid in 22 years, I paid in over $250,000 for flood insurance and wind insurance. And according to this site and this orange dot, the value of my home is $114,000, and I get 50% of that. If the cost of repairs reaches 50%, then I have to knock down my home. This is what that it states on your website, on their website, on somebody's website. Everybody can look it up. And you need to understand the dot that's on your home. And so I don't know if this is a land grab, want the bayfront properties, the beachfront properties. I don't know what's going on here, but I'll tell you what, man, it isn't right. And there's going to be some serious lawsuits coming at you.
All right, Marty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. All right. Okay, we're going to move on now. We're done with public comment. The next item is local achievements and recognitions. Councilman Allers, do you have anything this evening?
Just briefly to thank all the people that have reached out in support of each other from all across the country. There's been an overwhelming amount of people donating their time, their money, their resources to come in and help our little island. So I just want to thank them, thank all of you for working with your neighbors, and working with us to try to get back to what the new normal is going to be.
Vice Mayor?
I just want to mention that the entire town council, we're all wearing our FMB t-shirts. I want to thank the Community Foundation for this project. The money all goes back directly to the island. If you look up the Fort Myers Beach Community Foundation online, you can purchase t-shirts, hats, etc. Volunteers are doing all of this. Not a dime is staying with anybody else. It's all going back to the people who need it on the island. I urge you to support the Community Foundation in these endeavors.
Thank you. I'll just, I'd like to thank the separate incident manager teams that have come in to assist us. The first one was from the state of Louisiana right after the storm. They let us out for the first couple of weeks, and then when they deployed out, we were blessed by New York's bravest, Fire Department of New York. They're here assisting us now with the incident. They're specialists in these disasters. They're specialists in expediting things. They're specialists in procurement. They're the ones that are really helping us move things along as quickly as we can. They're the ones that can push the buttons. They're the ones that are bringing in more people to help us with all the permitting and other processes. They're going to beef up all of our departments, which will be, of course, reimbursable by FEMA. And so I want to thank all the people that have come in from those two states in particular, and other people from all over the state of Florida that have come in to assist us. Not the least of which were the USAR teams, the urban search and rescue people who were in here searching for our friends and neighbors who were under those buildings and under those pieces of wood and debris and everything, the ones that they found and recovered, and also the ones that they rescued. There were plenty of those as well. So I want to thank all of those people, and God bless them for the work that they do, and I'll turn it over to you, Councilman Adderholt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a chance to thank most of the various entities and groups in my invocation or prayer on last week. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to pass to my colleague, Councilor Veach.
Okay, and I would just really point out that to the hats off to staff, because I've been there more days than not in the little complex there, and they're working under very, very difficult circumstances, and they're doing, I think, a great job considering the scope of this disaster, and particularly. These are extraordinary times, and I think one thing that comes out of these kind of extraordinary times is the ability to witness extraordinary kindness and compassion among people who come in to help, who get away from their life, who come here to work or to volunteer, and from friends and neighbors. And it's not just mucking out a house, but it's people who are doing research, sharing information, clarifying a lot of things. There's a lot of entities that are at work here. This is a lot of moving parts, and I just really appreciate the people I've interacted with and the kindness that I've seen from them.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a few items that we're going to discuss, and it's also being made known here that this information is available on fmbgov.com and also the town's Facebook page. The first item is Resolution 22-37, and this is the extension of the local state of emergency. So is there a motion to approve Resolution 22-37?
I'll move to approve 22-37.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Just because there's a lot of new faces here tonight, I'd ask the town attorney just to briefly give an overview of what the extension of the state of emergency involves, just the highlights, if you would, Mr. Town Attorney.
The extension is under state law. We can declare a local state of emergency. Again, that state law says that we have to renew it every 7 days. The one that you approved last Thursday extends into obviously next latter part of this week. What we're proposing to do is once we get back on them every other Monday, I think, which is the intent to get back on a normal meeting schedule, is in between the meetings under our code, the mayor has the authority to extend that declaration of emergency for a 7-day interval. We'll put them back on, but what it does is it allows us to continue to seek and obtain assistance from the federal and state government. And that is the primary purpose for renewing that state of emergency every 7 days.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. One thing I forgot to do when I started the meeting today was I wanted to again thank Gordon and Victoria here for the use of their property. This has been extremely helpful for us. And so Gordon, if you're here, Victoria, thank you again very much. Okay, the next item, we're going to have some updates on the utilities reconnections. And we're going to start out with FPL. I think Charlotte's here. Yep, Charlotte.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Miller, FPL External Affairs. I'd like to... Is that better? Okay. I'm Charlotte Miller with FPL External Affairs. I appreciate the opportunity to give an update, and I will also be happy to answer the questions that have come up in public comment. So to date, we have energized the 4 feeders that serve the island. We have energized over 100 laterals, the overhead laterals, and we are currently working on energizing individual structures. As of 1 p.m. today, 177 meters had been energized on the island. We have crews that as soon as the town gives us an inspection list, which they do several times daily, our crews are ready to go and connect those meters. I'd like to take a minute in case some of the folks that are here don't understand the whole process of how that works. The town, for safety reasons, is requiring both structural and electrical inspections for each building and residence. And so once those are done by a structural engineer or a licensed electrician, they're submitted to the town, which in turn notifies us that they've received the information and these particular structures are safe to connect. I'd like to really emphasize that it's so important to utilize a reputable electrician or a structural engineer, because if an FPL crew arrives, which has happened a couple of times, to a site where the typically electrician misrepresented the state of that structure to the town, there have been situations where it was not safe to energize. So we do have the right to refuse to energize, and that's why it's so important that you utilize someone that you trust and know is going to provide the town with the correct information. With repairs, if the meter itself is FPL owned, the meter can surrounding it and the weatherhead, which is that big pipe going up, if it's an overhead service, are actually the customers. So for any meter cans or weatherheads that were damaged or were flooded, because with the flooding comes salt intrusion, and with the salt intrusion comes corrosion and potential fires. That meter can and weatherhead does need to be replaced by the electrician the homeowner is using. As far as the refurbished meter cans go, I'm going to check with our power delivery team on that, because that is correct that some meter cans are in shortage. So I'm going to get I'll let the town know, and if whoever asked that question, if you could just grab me afterwards, I'll be glad to get your information and call you directly as well. With temporary service, which we call T-pole, temporary pole, and that's, you'll have a meter pedestal on a pole, typically used with new construction, also can be used obviously with remodeling. It can be used with an RV if you don't want to run on generator. Those are, I think you're going to start to see quite a few more requests for those come in. And as far as the amperage goes for that question, T-poles usually typically have a 100 amp or a 200 amp service. 100 amp is low usage, lower voltage, but if it's working for your purposes and you're unable to find a 200 amp meter can, a 100 amp meter can would be fine if that's better, as long as it's on our approved list, and our list is pretty comprehensive on that. If customers need assistance paying for these meter can and weatherhead repairs, FPL does have a program. It's called Care to Share for qualifying customers, and we can assist with up to $2,000. So I will provide the town that information on your website. If you would like to post that, it's also at FPL.com. And I'll tell you in a moment, for people, I know a lot of people have trouble even receiving internet or phone right now. So I'll tell you in a moment how you can find out more about this in person on the island if you'd like to do that. FPL also has bill payment assistance available. So for folks that are struggling right now, if you need help with paying your bill and assistance with extensions, whatever, please contact our customer service folks. It's FPL customer service number. And again, if you're having trouble utilizing phone service, We have a customer assistance team that's on the island. It's at our staging site, which is right across from the Lani Kai. You can't miss it. There's this huge blue and white FPL banner. And we have folks there from like 8 to 5, 9 to 5 daily that will be happy to work with you and answer any questions you have about your account. If you need assistance in applying for one of these programs that I just mentioned, they are more than happy to help you. The last thing I wanted to mention was meter tampering. We've had a stolen meter on the island. Sadly, it was actually the first meter that had been energized on the island. And I bring this up because we need your help if that continues to occur. If you are aware of someone that has stolen a meter, it is a federal offense. It can be charged as a felony, and there are a lot of other actions that go along with that. So it's not something that is taken lightly, but just or even maybe more important is the fact that this creates a huge safety hazard, not only from the location that the meter's been pulled out, because then that meter socket's wide open, but if someone is plugging in a meter to a structure that is compromised or a meter can that's compromised, that is a huge safety hazard. It can cause fires as well. It can cause electrical shocks. It's just something we don't want to happen here on the island. You have enough to deal with. So if anyone is aware of something like that that happened, please let us know because we will pursue that. Are there any questions that I can answer? Yes.
First of all, thank you for being here. I just was wondering if you have any advice for the citizenry and or the electrical contractors who are doing the work based on the perspective of your teams in the field. Is there anything they can be doing to make this process go faster? Are there tips, advice that you could give just either the citizenry or the electricians that could help expedite or energize this process?
Sure. So to just go back for a moment for what I mentioned about making sure you have an electrician that is reputable and honest. We had one that came through. The letter was given to the town. The town had no reason not to believe this letter. It's a licensed Florida electrician. And we got there. Wires were hanging from the meter can. The meter can needed to be replaced, and none of that work had been done. So please try to use someone you can trust, and there are a lot of scams going on out there. If the meter can or any part of that does need to be replaced, then you need to go through the permitting process. So that's just some information for you to be aware of. If it's just an inspection to say, yeah, we're okay, we can have power turned back on, then you don't need a permit, from my understanding.
Charlotte, if anyone else here wants to speak with you about any particular case, you'll be available afterwards?
Yes, absolutely.
And also, for everybody's edification here, I'm sure a lot of you know already, there is a Thursday night informational meeting where all the department heads, the utilities, and everybody will be there for answers that evening. That's Thursday night, 7 p.m. at Heights Elementary School up in Harlem Heights. If you all know where that is, it's right up this way. So Charlotte will be there with her team and the water people and all the other utilities and any other aid. FEMA will be there, and anybody that you can imagine that you'd have a question for. All those people will be there for that informational meeting. So I hope everybody can come, make that. If you have questions, and Charlotte, I want to thank you for everything.
You're very welcome.
Charlotte,
happy to help.
If I may, just one quick question. You mentioned that the town, you receive from the town several a day requests to get power restored. What is the FPL's time frame from when they receive those requests from the town to when you're actually out to the homes?
At this time, we have crews on the island that are either able to do it same day or next day, unless it's an unusual type meter that we need to bring in on the island. We've got a lot of equipment already on the island, meters, transformers, etc. So it's available and ready to roll.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next item is water services.
Yes, I don't think Christie's here.
Okay.
Oh, she is? Okay, so you'll get right up to the last minute.
Corey,
While
ladies
she's
and
walking up, Dan,
Yeah.
what Charlotte didn't make perfectly clear is that we don't wait to the end of the day to send the people who came in and got approved that day. So several times during the course of the day, if you came in the morning, we don't make you wait till 5 o'clock to forward that information to FP&L. We forward the approvals that occur in the course of the day, sporadically throughout the day to FP&L so people don't have to wait
So
to the
what
end of
is
the
it-
business day.
Since we're talking about this and the water and the qualifying letter and all the stuff that seems to be going around now, how is that process holding up them being moved forward to receive power from the town's aspect? So you said somebody maybe just didn't get the memo that wasn't required to have the qualifier letter and whatever the other letter
All
was
right, well,
from the contractor?
that doesn't really have anything to do with getting power. That has to do with a permit.
Well,
Can I?
So
if I understand your question,
I'm just trying to clarify the process, because if you turn in your structural and you turn in your electrical, and then you get an email back saying it's not complete because you don't have this qualifier letter, that's a delay, and then you have to send in those letters.
So we're not, I've told the staff, do not require a qualifier letter to give it the FP&L the okay for turning on the power.
Okay, so if the electrical contractor sends in that either the panel's been replaced, that it's okay to receive power, that's going directly to FPL, regardless of the qualifier letter?
What we're doing is we're saying that if you have the electrical inspection, you're in touch with an electrician because they gave you the electrical inspection. You know that's a precursor to turning on power. So we're saying, okay, you have an electrical inspector who's usually your electrical contractor. We're telling FP&L to go out and have power. Now, occasionally, they're running into the case that Ms. Miller mentioned where they get there and property isn't ready to receive power. But rather than us create another bottleneck, we're just giving FP&L the green light to go out there. And it's probably very few cases once they get out there they can't turn the power on.
And then if you wouldn't mind, just for clarification, can you let everybody know what email address that you want them to send those to? I know there's been some confusion out there as to where to send it, whether it's the building department, whether it's utilities, where...
It's the building department.
The building department, okay.
If I could ask a follow-up question that I think is germane to this topic, particularly right before Christie speaks. A lot of folks are trying to understand if they have an electrical inspection and the inspection or the electrician files a report with the town, but it's going to require some work, can they get water based upon that initial electrical inspection?
Okay, so I'm going to let Christy answer something, and then I'm going to come back to your question, because I think people think that water's available all throughout the town, and you may be in a place where you can get electricity, but you can't get water yet, and I think that might be the disconnect. But let's let Christy give the
Very
list, and
good.
we'll come back to
All right, thank you.
I want to make one kind of observation maybe about the electrical thing that, like with my house, I went through and had an electrician, he made it safe. So he didn't go through and didn't replace the weatherhead, didn't replace the can. He went through and just cut off, turned off all the breakers, made sure it was safe, I guess, between the breaker and the meter. That didn't require a permit. But now if we want to do work and replace a weatherhead, replace a can, replace some electrical work, that requires a permit.
Right. What the typical situation is that electricians, what they will do is if they determine your first floor is damaged, they'll disconnect your first floor electrical from your box, and theoretically your second floor or third floor is okay. And then that is make it safe, using your words, Councilor Veach, and then submit that report to us, and then we will okay FP&L to turn on the power at that property under that scenario.
Christy Corey.
Hi, Christy Corey, Utilities Director. So first, I'd like to thank each individual that has reached out to me personally and said thank you and given my staff a little bit of grace. Thank you very, very much. As of today, at close of business, and my guys are actually still out there, we have 62 side streets on. We have 51.2% of the island turned on.
Say that again.
62 side streets.
Right.
51.2% of the island turned on for water.
Thank you.
Oh, whoa. See, that's difficult to even get my head around. So when you say 52% of the island and 62% of the side streets, when you say 62% of the side streets, does that mean every home that's able to take water, or it's available to them
Okay.
on those 62 streets?
So I'm going to lay out exactly what we're doing. So we're going down to each of the streets that we can get to, and keep in mind that our valves, we have about sometimes 2 to 3 valves per side street. The debris is causing a little bit of a problem for us, so I try to get the machines down there and get the debris out of the way, and then we can turn on the valves to the side street. Once we do that, then we immediately break up into individuals. So I'm out there, my office staff is out there, we're all out there, and we're hitting each house individually because we're watching water come out of the houses. Some meters have been turned back on. We did attempt to turn every meter off right after the hurricane. So we try to get out there and turn off the meters to people, that aren't particularly at the house. If people are at the house and they're stating that everything's good and everything's wonderful, then we're turning on their water meters for them. We do have the process that Roger has in place, or council has in place for all of the permitting processes. I would have to say we've probably gotten to about 70% of those items, or those residents particularly. Again, we're having a little bit of difficulty with debris because we can't get to the meters, but if I can get machinery out there, then I'm getting the debris moved and getting to the meter and getting it on for them. Just for a case in point, today we went to Bay Beach Lane to get Bay Beach Lane turned on. It was a hot mess, for lack of a better term. There were leaks everywhere, but we went to each individual meter, we turned them off, we tried to repair what we could, and keep in mind, at this point, we are also repairing on the resident side just to try to get people water back to them. We're not just repairing our sides. We are actually going on to property and helping people. So we've, just even some of the empty homes themselves that have pipes coming out of the ground, we're putting ball valves on them and turning them off so people aren't flooding. And we're doing the absolute best we can to get everyone water. We're averaging probably, we started last Friday. When we had this meeting last Thursday and I said we would be out there Friday morning, I was out there Friday morning. I was out there Friday morning turning on water. And we're out there I'm on that island at 5:45 along with every one of my crew members. We start at daylight and we work until the sun goes down every single day. And we will continue to do that until every resident on this island has water.
Is it time for question? Just a clarifying question, Christy, because your numbers are outstanding, and I'm juxtaposing your numbers with the electric numbers, and we have 177, I guess I understood, homes are now energized, but you're talking about 51% of the homes having water.
But
help me understand.
51% of the streets.
Streets, okay.
Right, 51% of the streets.
Okay.
We've gone down, like I said, I can't give you, I wish I could give you an exact number of the homes that we've turned on, but I'm trying to keep track of the streets at this point. But most homes, like we went out today and we went through our list of emails that everyone had received their electrical and their permitting process and went to turn those on today, and most of them were already turned on. So I think that a lot of people are starting to turn their meter on when they know that there's water to the street.
I guess what's confusing, I guess, to me is, and this is, your news is wonderful, is that it sounds like you must have more than 177 homes with water, correct? Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. We have more.
So I guess what confuses folks is that if you need your structural and your electrical, it sounds like, are you turning people's water on before they actually have the work done? They've had the electrical inspection, but you're able to turn it on before they've actually had all the electrical work done? Because there's a lot of confusion around that. Can you help people understand that process?
I understand that, and I think that the permitting process is the permitting process. If we feel that it's safe and we're out there and someone is home and we feel that it's safe to turn on their water, we are doing so. And let me say that Roger has given me permission to do that. So while y'all are clapping for me, I just want to say that Roger has given me permit. That's not something, because I would never make a decision. If there's a policy in place, I do want to make it clear that I would not go against that policy. But Roger has authorized me that if I feel that it's safe as the director to turn on their water, that we can do that.
So it sounds like, just in fairness, the threshold for the electricity, the safety threshold is much higher.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you've been given the discretion to use your discretion, which I think is outstanding, by the way. So thank you. That helps me understand
electric,
better.
I would have to say there's a big difference between electricity and water.
Okay, very good. That helps me understand. Thank you.
Christy, if I may ask you, this is all positive and great news, and I think you're a rock star and you're doing a great job. Could you, I think you're doing a good job of getting the streets out that have water. Could you maybe explain to the people what you're finding on some of the streets that don't? Because I get a lot of questions asked is, my neighbor's street has it, why don't I have it? So, there's damage, and what kind of damage you're finding, and what that process is why you're moving on. I understand that you're trying to get the ones that don't need repair on as fast as you can, and then you'll go back and
Right, and it is. I mean, and I'll give you an example of Primo. We went to Primo to turn on that water, and the whole street, literally the street rose up, and we immediately shut it down because, as I said in the last meeting, I don't want to devastate an area that's been devastated already. So, when it comes to a street like that, I want to keep moving, but bring back my contractor to repair that, which they did today and got water to Primo. So it's just a matter of when we get to a street and we have something like a main break, or we had a valve blow up on us the other day that basically just comes out of the street, I'm immediately going to shut that street off and then but I have 4 contractors, which are amazing. They're doing an amazing job. I couldn't do it without them. But we only have so many contractors that can actually do the live repairs or repairs on our larger mains. So we're kind of working at that. So that's where we are, kind of on the streets that don't have water. But, we're just kind of getting to them as we go down Estero Boulevard and see what we get.
Perhaps, not that I want to add more work to your plate, but would it be possible to maybe at the end of the day, as we're updating the streets that received water, some of the streets that maybe are going to require a little more extensive work, to give people, a little heads up that, you found an issue, you were at the street, but it's going to take a little bit more time to fix it. Don't have to necessarily give a reason, but that you were on the street, you found a problem, and you'll go back to fix it.
I don't have a problem with that.
We could definitely add that. I think you all know we're putting the list of streets that are up and running on our website and Facebook page. We have not been putting the streets that would look like the case of Primo, that it's going to take more intensive work, and so we haven't created a list for that. If you think it's helpful, we can. The only thing we don't know is sometimes we can fix it in 2 days, sometimes it's longer. We don't know till we get into it.
Yeah, I think most
but if you think people want to know that we were there, we looked at their line, and and for unfortunate bad luck, I guess, or if nothing else, we had to jump their street, we could add that.
I think it would be extremely helpful for people to see that at least you were there, you understand that there's a problem, and you're there working on it. It'll help ease their mind, that at least they can see what progress you're doing and maybe follow along, so they can update their street.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Christy, you'll also be there Thursday evening?
Absolutely, I will.
Now, Christy, you mentioned that some people are turning on their own meters.
Yes.
Now, is that something you're recommending, or is that something?
You know what? Pre-hurricane, no. I would have told you, do not touch that meter. Now, I'm just going to say, if you want to turn on your water, you go right ahead.
We've had, just to be clear, we've had cases where people's properties got flooded because of, and they like call us up and said there's water like shooting at all over my house.
Yeah.
So we don't recommend that they do that, but if people do that, and if they have a break in their own line on their side of the meter beyond what Christy can see and fix, they could theoretically flood their house. So it's wiser to turn on the meter when you're there initially, to make sure that there's no lines within the house that are broken.
Yeah, and if I can just add one thing to do that, if you could do that between sunrise and sunset, that would be amazing. Because the 1 a.m. calls, and believe me, we're coming, but whew.
And we've had a couple of those, unfortunately, all weekend stuff, so it really helps us that Waitia Street is ready for service, hopefully be home, and then we'll turn it on, you turn it. If you want the pleasure of turning the valve, we don't have a problem with that. We just want you to physically be there.
Thank you, Christie.
You're welcome.
All right.
Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Did your question get answered, Councilor Adderhorn? I think you did, but...
No, this is very helpful. I just, Roger, I want to ask you the same question I asked the FPL representative. Is there any advice you can give to the citizenry and/or the electrical contractors, the electricians, to help? We have 177 homes energized. I know everybody's doing their best. Obviously, the water is exponentially greater than that. Any advice you can give to the citizenry and/or the electricians to help their process go faster to get their power turned on?
Well, yeah, so that number is low.
You can turn your mic towards you. Yep.
Yeah, so that number is low, and I talked to the building and zoning staff, and basically showed them how I would like to see the permit review for the structural and power expedited. And I think, although that was only on Monday, the speed that we're going to gain as a result of that change hasn't hit yet, but will be seen significantly from here going forward. And basically, what we're doing is that if we have an engineer, and we were initially reviewing the engineer's report and the inspection reports, and if we have them, we're sending them to FP&L. So that's cutting off quite a lot of time out of the process.
Thank you.
I'd also assume it's probably advisable for everybody, if you haven't done it already, to turn all your breakers off and turn your master water off, because fewer surprises that way.
That's correct.
All right, we'll move on to the next item. That's debris removal. Is there someone here from the county, or?
I believe there's someone from both the debris removal company and the monitoring company.
Okay.
This is Jason Freeman, our Public Works Director, who interfaces with them.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jason Freeman, Public Works Director, for the record. I want to give a brief summary here. I'm joined by Crowder, Gulf, and Thompson, who are debris contractors, as well as our debris monitors. They're available to answer any questions that you all may have as well. Like Christie's team, since the day after the storm, Public Works has been out there 7 days a week, trying to clear the roads, make everything accessible as possible, documenting, assessing, and just helping out any way we can. So we just really appreciate everybody's patience as we get this debris moving. I do want to make a note, and Crowder might be able to give a little bit more detail, but they are going to work on dividing the island into 27 debris collection zones with at least one truck dedicated to each of those zones. And so that's going to split up, so just a couple streets will be in each zone with trucks dedicated to those. We're using both our new debris management site at the Bay Oaks ball fields, as well as now we're coordinating with Lee County, which has given us an extra place to take that debris and haul it off the island. So both of those are in use at this time. We're working with Waste Management to continue with household debris collection, just household waste and food waste. They're on the island Monday through Friday. We're working with them to get as many trucks out as possible to pick that up, that if people can try and separate at least the food waste and bag it up, that way that Waste Management can come and take care of that.
Excuse me, just before you head on the removal. So right now you're still dropping debris off at Bay Oaks?
Correct. We're using both Bay Oaks and Lover's Key.
Okay, now I think I heard at night that they're taking debris from Bay Oaks and moving it off. Is that true?
Well, let's wait for Crowder.
Yeah, we'll let Crowder clarify on that. And then just also to address, we're working on the inaccessible streets. We're working on those every day just to try and get those up and running as quickly as we can, filling those sinkholes on the town roads. And with that, I think I will open it up if you guys have any questions to Crowder or Thompson.
They'll explain what they're.
Yeah, sure. We're going to let them explain. Thank you very much, Jason. That one point that you made is worth reiterating right now, that Crowder has split up the island into 26 or 27 zones. That means there's one of those big double haulers in each one of those zones. Each one of those zones comprises your neighborhood in one other street or two other streets perhaps. So they're going to be more accountable for the pickup, and hopefully they'll just keep going around and around and around in your neighborhood. And we should see better results as a result of that. So,
And I did want to clarify that Crowder Golf, they are picking up 7 days a week.
okay.
Now,
Is there a representative from Crowder here? Sir?
They're coming forward, I believe.
and
Okay, we're just going to let Crowder give their, yes, sir.
Good afternoon, council. Thank you for having me. My name's Reed.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. My name's Reed Loper. I'm Vice President of Crowder Golf. Here with me also is Barton Holmes. He's the project manager that's been assigned to Fort Myers Beach. So just to give an update on debris removal, we currently have 50 hauling units that are running. 66 will be ramped up by the end of the week. To date, we have removed 318,000 cubic yards from the island itself. 60,000 of that cubic yards came from Estero Boulevard. The other 258,000 cubic yards came from town roads as well. We have been operational 17 days now for debris removal. About 14 of those days have been at, I guess what I would call full force. We were here in the town the day after the storm hit doing emergency push operations. There was a tremendous amount of search and rescue that did have to occur, so that did delay the start of debris removal operations. But after the debris removal or debris management sites were established, that's when we were able to start, ramping up those trucks and really start hauling this debris. The way we see it right now is at the current production rate of about 25,000 cubic yards per day. We feel that about 80% of the debris by volume will probably be removed in about 60 days. That remaining 20% will be collected as it continues to come out to the right-of-way. We are doing nighttime operations for sand removal and daytime operations for debris removal.
Reed, if I could ask you, a lot of the questions that have been out there is why can't you operate those trucks at night?
There's a very large safety concern, with our personnel and also with property concerns as well with doing debris removal, especially C&D at night. You have a lot of down power lines, a lot of things that can be pulled, and snatching down more telephone poles or pulling, meter boxes off of houses and things like that because you just can't simply see at night. So that's definitely something that we don't want to cause more harm. And we are doing those sand operations at night, and we don't want to impede in the sand removal that's going on at night as well.
Reed, another question that is asked a lot is obviously when they come by the homes that have had the C&D picked up, obviously the appliances and that kind of thing are left over. Will you be coming back around to get those, or a separate crew comes around to get those as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Next.
Reed, thank you for being here. As you know very well, Monday and Tuesdays been set aside to assist in your debris removal. Can you help folks understand, do you increase the number of trucks on Monday and Tuesday? Will people see a demonstrable difference in the activity on Monday and Tuesday? How does that work?
There is a sizable increase in the cubic yardage production, obviously on Monday and Tuesday because the traffic is not as much. But the amount of assets that are here are the same on Monday and Tuesdays. It just allows for us to remove more debris because it's open. But I don't want to talk out of turn with, talking about residents being able to come back on those days.
No, I'm not trying to put you in a trick bucket. I'm just trying to understand. But there are not additional assets on Monday and Tuesday. You're just able to move freer and more quickly and be more efficient. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay.
You said it because that was exactly what I was going to ask. No, it's great. It's a really good question. Now, is there an opportunity to put more assets on the ground on Monday and Tuesday because, it's a considerable inconvenience to the people on the island to give up those days for debris removal. And if there's a way we can accelerate and make the most use out of those days, I think that would be, preferable to everybody.
I agree. It's a little bit difficult because due to the tracking of the trucks, those have to be certified in for different clients to make sure that FEMA reimbursement is being tracked appropriately so all that funding is not jeopardized at all. So it'd be a little bit difficult to bring in, additional trucks from other places during those days.
Let's talk about that FEMA reimbursement for a minute, Reed.
Yep.
The pressure in all of this is that the town, or the county now, because the county has assumed the debris removal responsibilities for the town of Fort Myers Beach. They're the managing agent of this project. So the pressure is for the town of Fort Myers Beach and the county, more so the county, to finish this project within 60 days, or the reimbursement from FEMA will not be 100%. It'll be a reduced amount, 75, 25%, or something like that. When it drops like that, the local county or municipality, whoever it is that's on the hook, is on the hook. Am I right?
Well, to clarify, the county did not assume the financial responsibility of Fort Myers Beach contract. FDM assumed that responsibility.
Who did?
FDM, the state.
Okay. All
So
right. Well,
the county only picked up the, I guess the responsibility of managing the debris removal.
Right.
But I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, because Thompson is here as well, and they would know a little bit better. But I believe that 100% reimbursement is also getting extended to 90 days. So that does give a better window.
Have we confirmed that?
No, well, we're pushing hard for that reimbursement to get extended to 90 days. I talked to the county earlier today. They did not say that. They said they expect that 2 weeks before the deadline, and I think that's just a FEMA tactic to keep the pressure on to get as much work done. But if we get that word sooner, all the better. But we think it's going to take, potentially right now, particularly if we get into private property and commercial debris, could easily take beyond that anyway.
Yes.
So your point, I think you were trying to make, Mr. Mayor, is this, and that is that if and when FEMA stops paying 100%, there's a 12.5% share that's going to fall to somebody locally. And with the kind of numbers that this type of program costs, that would be a very, very large amount of money. So there's balancing act to be made, and that is the productivity to try to get as much done within the window of 100% or some access sacrifice. And that's the difficult balancing act that we're dealing with. The potential cost of the 12.5% is significant, and I think that we should be very cautious about not doing anything and everything in our power to avoid putting ourselves in that position.
Reed, I got a follow-up question for you. You had said 80% would be collected in 60 days. Is that 60 days from today or from 60 days when you started?
I feel that's 60 days from when we started running the numbers we had. And again, that is the debris that's brought out to the right-of-way. Because these are citizen-driven events, the citizens do have to bring that debris out to the right-of-way unless a private property debris removal program is approved, which hopefully that will be approved. And then the remaining about 20% of debris always on these responses takes a little bit of time to come out and be collected. That's just the natural
Just a
flow of it.
clarification, when you said, so when people take their, whatever's on their land, and I realize it may not even be their house, it could be somebody else's house, and they move it out to the edge of the right-of-way and get it picked up, that's considered a right-of-way removal?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And so private property means actually going on people's lots and taking it from there?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
If you could elaborate a little bit on that private property removal, should that be approved, what would that entail? So say someone's house was red tagged and it had to be demolished. Would that include taking that house down, or would the homeowner be responsible for taking that down, and then you guys take away the debris, or do you take the house down in the debris?
There's a lot of conversation that's around that right now with some FEMA guidance that is being, I guess, looked at to try to help that process. I'm probably not the best person to speak to that process at this time. I don't know if Thompson and Cole, do you want to talk about the?
Well, I could talk to it a little bit.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
So, I think one of the speakers earlier today, or perhaps even at a prior meeting, this is, we can't just walk on someone's property and do something, so we need to have a right of entry, we have to have their authorization to do it, we have to hold, there's a lot of sort of quasi-legal paperwork that needs to be completed as a condition to anybody going on someone's property and taking down the structure and removing the associated debris. So there's some things that have happened that are very, very good news. This would be a highly unusual step for FEMA and the state to take to allow private property removal in the fashion that they're talking about and commercial property removal in the fashion that they're talking about, where you execute some paperwork which basically says you allow us on your property, you hold us harmless for incidental damage to your property, and so on and so forth, and someone else will basically come in and remove your structure if that's what you want and haul that material away. So we are continuing to work with our partners at the county and our legislative partners to try to push that concept to try to get it over the finish line where, probably at the 20 and, we have a first down and there's, 4 minutes left in the game. So we're feeling pretty good, but it's not quite over the finish line just yet. But we're working to get prepared to score that touchdown, if you will, using this sports analogy. We're working on getting rights of entry and those forms settled so that as soon as we're green light and we can tell people the nuts and bolts of how that program will be implemented, we'll have the associated forms, et cetera, available. How many people will sign on? We don't know. What the incremental increase to the workload that they were just talking about, we don't know. How long it'll take, we don't know. So, there's theoretically the game of, well, we'll let you do it, but you have to pay the 12.5%. That hasn't really been, the dust on that issue hasn't really been settled yet either. So, a lot of this stuff is a moving target. The good news is that in the past, FEMA has pretty much, blankly said no to these types of things. The fact that they're willing to say yes, recognizing the extent of the damage that Fort Myers Beach has received, is frankly a great thing for us. So now we just have to be a little patient as some of those details get worked out. We continue to talk about them at least once, if not twice a week, between myself and the county and the state and FEMA. The state emergency manager usually visits us every week. With few exceptions, sometimes twice a week. So we're working in concert to try to be able to save people money so they can apply that money towards rebuilding, whether it's their house or business. And that's what our ultimate goal is, to help them avoid these potential out-of-pocket expenses so that they'll have more money to be able to utilize towards their redevelopment of their property.
Can I make a statement regarding that?
No, sir. No, sir. We're going to keep on. We're going to keep on with this.
Down Lover's Lane and paid $12,500 of debris that wasn't mine, packed into my yard down Lover's Lane. The street is still full at the end where my gate is, but I paid 8 men for 2 days in labor and equipment, $12,500. It wasn't my debris. So I don't know. Will I get reimbursed for that? Not my debris.
I don't think so, but
I don't either.
Reed?
Just real quick, I want to follow up, Roger, on your point. In those negotiations, are part of those negotiations whether FEMA will reimburse for removal of debris, cars, boats, debris from the canals? Is that part of those negotiations as well? And do you have any direction on that?
It is, but it's a separate conversation, but it is.
And Reed, just real quickly from you, if folks have their debris out front, as you talk to your drivers and your crews, do they have any asks from the citizenry, the town, others, as to how we could make your job go faster? In other words, is there things people can do to make your crews be able to work more efficiently?
Yes, absolutely. The more that the debris can actually be sorted on the right-of-way, I know that's a tough ask because there's not a lot of room on the right-of-way because there is a lot of debris, but trying to segregate and have those white goods in one area, have the C and D in another, have the e-waste.
C and D?
Construction and demolition debris. having that in one pile, the white goods in another area, and then also trying to segregate any of the household hazardous waste. That does expedite the collections, and making sure that you're not putting any of this debris, covering up any utilities. That is very, very important.
Fire hydrants.
Exactly.
Anything else?
So Reed, I'm just going to cut to the chase here. Just about everybody in this room and the rest of the people on the island that aren't here, they're upset that they can't get back on Monday and Tuesday, okay? That decision was made by the people that are managing the operation, which is Lee County. Now, if we were to override Lee County's decision to not allow people back here on Mondays and Tuesdays, how badly would that hamper your operation down there?
It's hard to put a figure on it, but we've been seeing, on the days that are not limited access, we've been seeing about a 20% reduction in production.
Okay. All right, that's good enough.
I think another kind of point is that excuse us, we have our meeting. So the question I have, and it's kind of a point to make, that I know people who have cleared their house, moved the debris out to the street, and paid for it. I've seen one neighbor, they had quotes from $9,000 to $50,000 to clear their lot. So it's really important to shop around. But if you want to get it out now, you can pay for it. If you wait, it may be cheaper, but you've got to wait. So that's a decision to make. If people really want to get this debris cleared, want to do it now, then you may have to pay more out of your own pocket. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say, but there's no guarantee.
Well, yeah, I think the biggest thing is that there's still no guarantee. So, for people who, and I know everybody wants to move expeditiously and recover as soon as possible. So there may be people who can't afford to wait and have to proceed, and there may be others who can afford to wait and will wait and see what happens. Like I said, if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said the chance of this happening is probably less than 10%. But everyone's working very hard to try to get everyone to understand the extraordinary nature of the storm and the damage that had occurred. And I think the governor's been here several times, the president's been here, and I think people have flown over Fort Myers Beach and they've seen the damage that was caused by Hurricane Ian. And I think because of that, we're in a position where they're being a little bit more flexible than they would typically be.
I think too that, from what I understand, it's significantly more expensive to clear your lot and pay somebody private to do debris removal. So there's also a risk that if you wait, that you may have to do that debris removal as well and pay the price, if there's no reimbursement for a private property.
Thanks, Reed. Does the gentleman from Thompson want to sit?
It's actually the lady from Thompson.
I'm sorry. I didn't see you back there. Come on up and say hello.
Hi, my name is Nicole Lehman. I'm with Thompson Consulting Services.
Thanks for coming.
I can answer any questions.
Why don't you, just for the benefit of everyone here, explain your function in this operation?
Sure. So we're the debris removal monitor. We do all of the documentation management and provide the data to the town and to the state. And that's the source documentation that's submitted to FEMA for reimbursement. With this data, we also do live reporting. We're able to provide reports to the town. We do live reporting so we know where the trucks are working, and we can provide that level of visibility to town management and to the state and the county.
Questions?
Are you removing bagged debris?
So bag debris is not typically eligible by FEMA because you can't determine what's inside of the bag. It could be putrescent debris, it could be dead animals, it could be really anything inside the bag of debris. I didn't make the FEMA rules, so please, don't shoot the messenger. But they do prefer that you put the debris out unbagged on the right-of-way. And I know it doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes, but that way you can see what it is, and it can be collected properly and taken to the proper disposal facility.
But household trash can be put in bags and put out when there is trash collection going on.
Household trash, yes.
Any other questions from the council?
Or food waste.
Thanks so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Are you going to join us Thursday evening or someone?
Yeah, we will be, Thompson will be there on Thursday.
Okay.
And we'll be able to answer any questions you may
Okay,
have.
and Crowder as well? Someone will be there Thursday evening?
Yeah, Crowder Golf will be there on
Okay,
Thursday.
thanks so much. And
Oh, just real quick, when you're tracking, is there any way the citizenry can then follow the progress of the debris
Yeah.
removal? Can you, on your website, kind of show where folks have been, where they're going? Can we see what you see in your tracking data?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working with Jason, with Roger, on a public-facing portal that could be available through the town's website. It's an ArcGIS, so it would show progress as of the previous day. It would be updated every morning, and it'll show what streets the crews have been working on. There is such a substantial amount of debris in the town that it is difficult when you look at a map to say, wow, they've been on every street, and then think, what is the progress that's been made? The debris that's been removed to date is tremendous, so you'll be able to see the collection totals, how much debris has been removed. And I think we're also working on a way visually for the public to understand, what a cubic yard means and understand the quantity of material that's being removed on a daily and cumulative
That
basis.
public-facing data would be just really helpful. Thank you for doing that.
Of course,
Yep.
yeah.
And also, I think that people are still putting out debris, right? So when you go through a street,
Yeah. It is. It continues to come out, and as Reed mentioned, it's a citizen-driven event. Obviously there's programs that are being discussed and considered. Something to consider in that is there is a subrogation of insurance associated with PPDR, private property debris removal. So if you do receive insurance for debris removal or demolition, you would have to turn that over, as part of that process. We encourage people to get the debris out to the right-of-way, and that's, a process that's ongoing, and they'll be continually collecting from the right-of-way to get that cleaned up.
thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Take
it. Okay, we're going to move on. The next-
I had one more point, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Okay, I think Councilor Adderholt was asking a little bit about some other debris operations. I want to leave that go unanswered. So, other than the cars that were parked in the right-of-way, the state is going to work on taking care of vessels and cars, basically anything titled. So if it had a title issued by the state, they're going to handle that removal of that, and that's not necessarily limited to exclusively land-based versus water-based. So if it has a title, that's the state's going to handle its removal. For things that are not,
right, does that matter, like, regardless of where it is? I know
Yes.
someone has someone's car in their pool.
right, if it has a title, the way it was explained to me is if it has a title with the state, so if you have an untitled boat, they wouldn't get it, but if you have a titled boat, they would. So if you made your own boat and you never titled it, they wouldn't handle that, but if you got a title for the boat you made, they would handle that. And then for the non-titled things, they're basically going to treat them through like debris, and I assume that they'll be using perhaps Crowder Gulf or one of their other contractors to do that, and that would be something that the county and state would work collaboratively on. And we've also asked the county to continue to work with the state to help the town achieve those objectives as well, including any debris that's in the waters owned by the town or under lease where the town is responsible for those submerged lands. So the net effect is we have a tiered program to try to take care of all the debris, and what I've tried to do is minimize the town's financial risk with respect to the cost of getting that debris removed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on. The next item is Human Services. I'll start this off. Right after the event, the first station that was set up was right next to Town Hall. All the first responders were there, and they set up the services with the food and the showers and the laundry and so forth. Well, that's being pretty much demobilized now, and those sites have moved on to other areas on the island. Beach Baptist on Connecticut Street is a real hub right now of that activity. They also have the FEMA tent, the Verizon tent, the counselors there. There's just a lot going on there, and it's also burgeoning now down at Santini Plaza with the showers and the laundry and the food and the restrooms and so forth and so on. And there's been discussion today with the incident managers that's been going on for a few other days about opening one more on the north end of the island, if need be, and I'm sure there's a need. So there'll be 3 throughout the island of those types of what do we call those, community centers or what have you?
Community service centers.
Community service centers. Roger, you want to expound on that a little bit? Did I leave anything out?
Right, so we're trying to make sure that as we're going through this process of restoring electric and water, that people will be able to get access to the basic human needs that they need. We're trying to roll out those services along with having Lee Tram run some type of transportation up and down the island so that people don't necessarily have to walk or use their cars again, with the idea of trying to keep traffic to a minimum. TD service centers, they're currently providing hot food, and that's going to switch to volunteer food. I know some folks have worked very hard in the community to bring volunteers onto the island with food, and we hope that activity will continue. For those people who either don't have electricity or access to food, as everyone knows, there's no grocery store on the island right now. We do have, as mentioned, we've heard that some people are having problems having enough fuel to feed their generators with the Monday, Tuesday closure, so we've arranged for a private food truck availability on the island, and all that information is on as was said earlier, on our website and Facebook page. So we're trying to help people sort of get through this period before they have full access to electric and water.
I just wanted to mention, I was under the understanding that Allison Geeson has been coordinating a lot of this work. And
she is, and I think she's here somewhere.
And I wanted to recognize her for that.
Here she is.
We've recognized other members of our staff for the work they're doing, and I just wanted to make sure that Allison got mentioned, and if anybody had a question for Allison.
I have a question for Allison.
She thought she was going to sneak out just there.
The community service center's been well discussed, but Allison, since you're here and you're our expert, could you just give us a thumbnail sketch of what the status is of the Mound House and Newton Park?
So unfortunately, Newton Cottage is no longer. It doesn't exist. So there is a blank slate at Newton Beach Park. At Mound House, though, we have really great news. We had very minimal damage with that site. We did have some flooding, but that structure is going to be here a long time. So we're very excited that Mound House is intact. And so...
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And how about the buildings in Borkep at the Bay Oaks, like the old gym?
So those were totally flooded. So the pool and the recreation center, the water was up above the door. So we do have a lot of flood damage. Not gotten structural information on that yet. We're still doing assessments. I do know that Mound House is structurally sound, and as soon as that becomes available, I'll let you know. But that was flooding up over the doors for both Bay Oaks and the pool area there. Do you have any questions about the resource centers, since my staff is manning those?
Just a lot of the Southsiders are asking about the status of Santini Plaza. They're very thankful you're doing that. Do you have an estimation as to when that'll all be up and running, and then what exactly will be offered there at Santini Plaza?
So Santini is fully up and running. We have 2, as Roger mentioned, that are up and running. We are looking for a 3rd location, and I do believe that we will have verification on a 3rd location on the north end tomorrow.
Just since you're here, what would be offered at Santini Plaza for
So
folks?
Santini Plaza has laundry, bathrooms, and showers, and those are 24 hours a day. We also have a tent. You can get information and you can get supplies, and that's manned 9 to 5, and then hot meals from 11 to 5 right now through the World Kitchen and some other vendors. We also have water and ice and MREs that we can give you and some other supplies.
I can just tell you that's much appreciated. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We're
So
glad
Allison,
to do
a
it.
lot of people have reached out about wanting to bring meals for people, volunteers to eat. Should they contact you? Would that be the best point of
Yes.
contact to
Please
coordinate
do.
a place to do that?
Absolutely. Anybody
great.
who's interested in helping this community, I would love for them to go through me, and I will help get them the resources and locations that they need to be able to distribute. So yes.
So I just need to add to that, we've pulled our Parks and Recreation employees to help us with this community service centers. And they've stepped up and filled this role. That's not what they typically do. And I know that there's a lot of frustrated and in some cases angry people out there. And we're very sorry, and we're going to do everything we can to help you through the circumstances that you find yourself in, but please do not take it out on these younger employees who are just there trying to do a good job. We really appreciate just showing a little kindness to them. They're doing the best that they can. If you want to be mad, you can be mad at me, but please don't be kind to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're really fantastic. Those kids, they're young, they're enthusiastic, and they're a lot of help. Thanks so much, Allison.
You're welcome.
And Allison will be there. Allison will be there Thursday night as well.
Yes,
to answer
I will
more
be.
questions.
Yes.
Okay. Or you can grab her on the way out. Thank you.
Will the beach school be open this school year?
No, it will not. The beach school is done for now. I'm sorry to say. My daughter also went there, so it's not easy for me to say that. Okay, the next item is private fuel availability. Roger, you want to?
Right, I mentioned a few seconds ago, I just want everyone to be aware that we have arranged for private fuel to be available since the 2 fueling stations that were in Fort Myers Beach are down. Their hours and prices are posted on our website and Facebook page. And so for people who need fuel on the island and don't want to, or have a need to get off the island to do other shopping and other errands, they can get fuel on the island to feed their generators and meet their fueling needs.
All right. The next item is temporary housing. The first item is allow property owners to place wheeled RVs or trailers on their property for up to 18 months while rebuilding. You want to talk about that one, Roger?
Well, so I
us
think a
off.
question came up in citizen comment about why 18 months, and the reason why 18 months was suggested here is because that's what FEMA gives people when they give you a FEMA trailer. So that's why we started with that, and as FEMA does, we would evaluate where you are in the progress of rebuilding at 18 months, and of course, if you've been working diligently at it, and if there's no fault of your own it's taking longer, we would continue to work with you, but we felt that that was a sort of a checkpoint to just determine where you are and how much more time you might need to complete your reconstruction of your property.
Is that something we need to vote on, Mr. Attorney, or just have consensus among the council?
You need to bring something back.
Well, if ultimately it's the desire of the council to allow that, we will have to bring some of these items to you in the form of either a resolution and an ordinance. Unfortunately, notwithstanding the disaster that this community has experienced, the governor and the legislature have not suspended the normal requirements that we have to follow to adopt resolutions and ordinances, and that's how we would implement this. We would adopt an emergency ordinance. It still has to go through the public process, but it would be a temporary ordinance that would allow for the placement, assuming you direct us, the placement of these temporary trailers anywhere in the town, notwithstanding zoning district that otherwise currently prohibits them. So that's the process that we would have to go through.
So this first item would be by resolution or ordinance?
It would, I believe it has to be an ordinance,
If I
the
could-
council, if the direction is
If I
for
could
us-
interject,
Yes.
a way to maybe move the process along, I understand we ultimately have to do some kind of official act, but as a council, we could have a consensus to not enforce the current regulation and instruct the town manager not to be enforcing people to, if they do put an RV on their property, and that way people could act more quickly before we actually get the ordinance passed?
Yes, if that's, I mean, I think that we still need to, make the public aware that if we are suspending the current enforcement of the prohibition, we're not suspending the regulations that it has to be properly installed, hooked up, because otherwise then we have an issue with them not being properly hooked up to water or to sewer and
I understand that.
I think clearly if there's a consensus or direction that comes out of tonight's meeting with any of these items that we're talking about under E, clearly seeing which way the council would like us to proceed, we're not going to say you jump-started that system by a day or 2 or 3 or a week, for that matter.
I guess then I'd like to make a motion that this council suspend enforcement via instruction to the town manager to suspend enforcement so that people can temporarily place RVs on their property until we get this ordinance or resolution passed. And I'd also like to ask that we could maybe come up with some policy where we could put in electric power to these people that doesn't have to go through the meter with their house and the whole electrical thing. There's ways of doing that, getting them power.
With the T-pole.
A small amount of power just to run their RVs without having to go through the other process.
Madam Vice Mayor, could you also add water to that as well where appropriate?
Yes.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so
I'll second.
so can I help here maybe?
Well, I'd like, sure.
There was a second, I heard the second.
All right, I'll be glad to take whatever instruction you give me, but I would just like to be sure before we do that there's a consensus to move forward with number 1, and then if there is, then clearly you can give me what instruction to do between now and the time that gets codified. So I assume that there's a consensus to move forward with number E1, but let's just kind of get that on the record and we'll...
And one just comment I'd like to make is one potential problem I see is that, these RVs can get in the way of debris clearance if they're large. So it seems that there must be some kind of qualifier that they have space, debris-free space to put these.
Well, I think that, if we work with a wheeled vehicle, hopefully we can make sure that if it does become a problem, they can adjust it. But clearly we'll make it known to people that your RV and the place for your debris can't be the same place.
I would also like to see, I'm obviously in favor of this as well, but I would also like to see that if we're going to keep it at the 18 months, that the wording be that we revisit this ordinance after 18 months as opposed to it just ending after 18 months. As we heard, it could be 60 days or even longer before they'll have this debris removed, so not everybody will have access to get an RV into their property until some of this is removed. So I think just bringing it back before the council to have it reviewed after 18 months and make a decision seems like a better idea.
If I might suggest reviewed in a year so that people will know in advance of the 18 months whether it's going to be.
I'd be fine with that, as long as it's a review and not just an end date.
I agree with that.
I would second that as well.
I will accept that as a friendly amendment to my motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Any objection? That carries unanimously. There's your direction.
All right, so that includes for John to prepare an ordinance to implement this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, just want to be clear.
Okay, next item is to allow use of storage pods for the same amount of period, 18 months, for rebuilding.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to almost mirror the exact same thing as the first one.
Yeah, but it'll be part of it.
I would second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously.
Excuse
Okay,
me, Mayor.
The next item,
Who made, it's me, over here, clerk. Who made the second on the first
I did.
motion?
Okay, thank
Councilman
you.
Veach.
On the first one, Counselor Adderholt, second one, Counselor Veach.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, the next item is allow the lease of property such as Red Coconut or Gulfview for recovery worker housing. Who added this item on?
Well, so, I'm receiving calls from people, can I put, I'm working at Condo X or working for Company B who's working to do restorations on the island. Can I set up a trailer for myself and my employees, and where can I put that? So the question is, I thought you may want to have them located at properties that are, sort of in the trailer, set up for trailers, or conversely, you could just let people set them up in parking lots of commercial properties, whatever you just decide. But I thought the first place would be, the obvious place to me would be places like the Red Coconut or Gulfview Colony, since they were basically already prepared or for those types of vehicles to be on
So
there.
that's assuming the cooperation of those.
Well, assuming that, but I would think that,
Yeah, right.
they're not going to get any tourists right now, so,
Right.
it might be a good way for them to get some income.
Just for clarification, so are you saying allowing the, like, let's say the Red Coconut to lease out their pads to people, or is this something the town would lease from them and then use it?
I would just say that if you want us to let them set up on any and all commercial properties, or to limit the commercial properties that they could set up on. So I'm just suggesting these two, there may be others, but if you want it any and all, or do you want a limited subset?
So it's just to allow the properties to lease space for the RV. So the town's not an
We're not
intermediary in this.
involved in the transaction.
I would move approval of number 3 with the permission of the owners.
Of course.
I'll second that. That was me again, Amy.
Second. Any discussion? Any discussion on that motion? Any objection? It carries unanimously. Okay, before we go to item F, I think there's a couple of other items we have to clear up before we move on. We might as well talk about the temporary power poles. Is that something the council wants to permit while all of this is going on, as was stated earlier for...
I thought I made that a part of my motion for the RVs. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I was.
I
wanna-
thought I had made it a part of my motion.
Well, it may not just be the RVs, though. It may
So-
be,
So right now, right, I mean, people can apply to get a T-pole as part of a permit, because that happens all the time. You have bare ground, they put a T-pole in so that workers have power. And we're talking about allowing a T-pole to be put in without a permit? I mean, what's the distinction we're talking about here?
I thought the vice mayor included that in her motion.
Well, she did for the RVs.
And if
Okay,
there's-
if you don't, all right, we'll move
No,
on.
but did you have something that
Well, I
that
mean,
we're
there was-
missing?
Do we want to allow, I mean, is there some shortcut to put in T-poles where there's not an active permit? Is that something that there's demand for?
I suppose there could be other reasons. Well, I guess when the construction starts, that'll be in their
The
application.
only thing I'm thinking is someone has a house, I mean, maybe it's pretty fine that they need electrical work, but having electricity is sometimes useful for
To the
being able to
slab.
do that work.
Yeah.
Right.
To the slab?
Right.
What if we're trying to put a trailer on there and we don't have anything except that, and we're trying to clean up our homes, could we live in a trailer possibly, and then be able to clean up our lot?
So my understanding of the vice mayor's motion was that we're going to, if for RVs that qualify under E1, that we're going to try to get them a full set of utilities, which includes power, water, and wastewater hookups. That's my interpretation of what I heard. So if that's incorrect, please correct me.
That's what I intended.
All right. Okay. All right, we'll move on to F. Allow Fort Myers Beach businesses to operate outdoor displays or trailers or food truck trailer. You want to talk about?
I think we have many businesses who were devastated in Hurricane Ian. Some of them may want to set up a kiosk in their parking lot, if they're not a food-based business. Some of them might want to set up food truck, if they were a food-based business, and I think we should consider giving them sort of a little bit of a leg up to get started in rebuilding their business, and this may be one way that we could do that. Obviously, they don't have to do that if they don't want to, but I don't know that we want to keep our current regulation where they can't do that on the books under these circumstances.
I think, go ahead, ma'am.
I would be in favor of that, but I would like to really take seriously the words Fort Myers Beach businesses, so that we are helping the people who are already in business on Fort Myers Beach to reestablish themselves. So I would like to make sure that those words are included in any motion we have on that topic.
And I would assume too that like a food truck, you'd have to have a restaurant business to have a food truck, and
Well, I think allowing people to pivot a little bit might be a good idea. Some people, there may not be a lot of demand for buying clothing, for example, on the beach, but if they want to sell something else that is needed on the beach, it's still retail. I'm not against allowing a business to pivot slightly.
John, what would be the best way to do a motion for this to make it so that if you were a business on the island pre-Ian, that you are the one, that you have the right, you have the option to open back up if you want? And how would we do that if, for instance, you couldn't have a restaurant if you had it in that location because it was either devastated, it fell into the Gulf or something? How would it be an open end? If you find a location on the island that someone will allow you to put for instance, a food truck? How can we make it, or how can we word that so that, one, as Madam Vice Mayor said, if you have a business or had a restaurant on the island, that you get the first right of refusal? We don't want anybody from everywhere coming in.
I think that certainly what you just said, and that it's being in a commercially zoned area. So if they're, if they choose, if a particular business owner chooses to maybe partner with another business owner who has excess capacity to accommodate and say, hey, I'll make my, very large parking lot available to you while you build back your location, then I think that within any commercial zoning district. In many respects, it's very similar to what you just did with the mobile homes. That's how I understand it. And that's how we would draft it and bring it back to you.
So technically, could the town say, and this is just spitballing, but could the town say, since Newton Park building is gone, that we could use that as a food truck place, just as an example, because the town owns
That's
that.
not what we're contemplating here. That's something we can contemplate under a separate item. What we're contemplating here is an existing restaurant who had a lease or owned a property that was a restaurant, who now their physical building is damaged, but they want to open up a restaurant. They could get a food truck or a kiosk out of that, assuming they get health department approval, for the time being while they're rebuilding the restaurant. If they're a retail business, they could open up a kiosk in front of their business and in the parking lot or whatever, and sell whatever they feel people might be needing or in today's environment. So that's that. Now we can look to beyond that, having spaces such as Newton Park parking lot or other things available, but that's not what this initially contemplated. It was really to help the people who either had a commercial business property or someone who had a lease on a commercial business property, to help them get back started if they wish to.
And we would verify that by any business, restaurant, or whatever that had a business occupational license issued by the county or state or town prior to or at the time of Hurricane Ian.
Correct.
Making it exclusive to the beach businesses.
I don't think it would take but a half a day for someone who set something up that wasn't a Fort Myers Beach person for it to get reported to us.
One never knows. One never knows.
It may be useful. I don't know if we should make it a requirement or suggestion that people keep the same name on their food truck as they had for the restaurant, because there's certainly a lot of loyalty to certain restaurants.
Okay, is it, so it sounds like we have consensus here.
Is there a motion to allow Fort Myers Beach businesses?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just want to make sure that we, to the Vice Mayor's point, that we expand that to other businesses as well, with Publix being closed, with 7-Eleven being closed, with CVS being closed, with hardware stores being closed on the island. If other businesses who are Fort Myers Beach businesses want to do a temporary kiosk to help fill those needs, we should certainly welcome them as well. But I
Yeah.
support the motion.
I think particularly the hardware stores, they're going to get a lot of business.
Okay, any further discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. All right, the next item is Town Hall replacement options. We've been having ongoing discussions down there with the incident commanders and so forth about, the future. I mean, we're certainly concerned about what's happened already, but we have to, of course, plan for what's to come. And we've been kicking around this idea of what we're going to do about a town hall that's been damaged beyond repair. So there are options that we're considering that have been talked about that, of course, we want to bring to the entire council to discuss, and that's what we're going to do right now. So, Roger, the question earlier was brought up by that woman from Kentucky about this business about budgeting and so forth, and do we have the money to do all that? And just tell us how this financing would occur on a new town hall, please.
Okay, so the way we'll be rebuilding this building and repairing Mount House and anything else is we have an insurance policy on our property like some people have on their homes. To the extent that the repairs or rebuilding needed exceed what our insurance proceeds would be, we would go to FEMA and ask them to fund the difference. And they would then advise us whether or not they felt the project qualified, and if they would fund the difference. In some cases, they may fund 100% of the difference. In some cases, they may fund 80% of the difference. But we would know that before we award the contract.
Roger, have we talked to the library board at all about potentially using that location? I mean, it's not going to be used probably for quite some time. It's a very large space. I think it would give some of the employees a place to actually have an office, and maybe put this on the back burner for a little bit to vet it out a little bit more. I'm a little leery on, jumping the gun.
Yeah, so if you want to widen the definition of number 6 on that list to install or find a temporary town hall to meet the needs for next, that's fine with me.
I would just add to that, if I could. I had a chance to, as an individual council member, not speaking for the council, I had a chance to talk to a member of the library board today, Jan Fleming, and she said that she feels, and she was, again, speaking as an individual member, she felt like there's a possibility that could be very viable. And of course, the library had some damage as well, but they've had remediation almost immediately because they use the same vendor as the fire department. So that's on a fast track to be repaired. And the library, of course, beautiful building, and it probably will be underutilized for the next year. And it would be a tremendous accommodation for our town employees. And we could potentially still utilize some of the library services as well. I think that would be I really would strongly encourage us to explore that as the temporary town hall in the interim as we consider these other options. I have no problems with wrestling with these other options, but as an interim basis, I'd hope we'll consider the library as an option. In coordination, of course, obviously we'd have to defer to the authority of the library board as they have jurisdiction, but if we could partner with them, I think that could be an outstanding option in the interim as we look at all of our options.
And that's what we're doing here this evening. I mean, we didn't come, it wasn't my intention, and I'm sure it wasn't Roger's, to come here tonight with these solutions that we're going to move forward with. These are just ideas that we're throwing out here before the council to think about. to think about.
That's it's a good discussion.
And the library is a great one to think about. So Roger, you might want to expand on the future of Town Hall. Then. Now we're talking about temporary, and well, as long as we're talking about temporary, I'll throw another one out there. I spoke with the owners the past few days of the people that own the Estera building, the one that we talked about some time ago down on the south end of the island that's unoccupied right now, that Sunstream had built. So they've had DeAngelis Diamond in there working and doing the repairs on the storm. And as a matter of fact, they've almost got it completed. And they've been in preliminary discussions with us about the possibility of a lease there. Now, I'm not saying that we should go and lease this, especially if we have something that the library board is willing to give us for little or nothing, whatever that. I don't know what their intentions are, but this is another option. This is another option. So I'm just putting that out there. And maybe as a result of this discussion today, there'll be other options to come up here in the next several weeks. Who knows? But so anyhow, that's what we're doing here today. And Roger, you want to just give the 50-cent tour of the idea for the new town hall itself on the property?
Have we reached a consensus about the temporary idea yet?
Well, one question before you, because I know Roger talked about insurance and then potentially FEMA funding. Is there a clock on that? I mean, if we lease the place for a couple of years, will there be FEMA funding for a building, or is something you have to do within kind of the windows of this disaster?
Well, I would generally say this, that the further you get away from the date of the landfall, the less FEMA thinks it's associated with the hurricane. I don't know that they have a hard and fast rule that says after the state it's gone, and before that date it isn't. But clearly, their flexibility is greater, closer, while it's an emergency versus when it's no longer an emergency. So I don't know that the items are necessarily mutually exclusive, because if you decided to even just say put out a bid for town hall at a particular site, that's going to take a month, 45 days. Then you have to find out, whether FEMA will fund it and to what extent. So that's not going to happen overnight. And then you have, 14, 16 months, 18 months perhaps to build it, depending on market conditions. So you can proceed on 2 tracks if you wish to. The real question is, clearly if it's going to be a longer period of time and we're going to have to rent something, the longer we rent for, the better the deal we're going to get, versus the shorter we rent it for, the more expensive that deal's going to be. So to the extent that the council has a vision of what to do, what you feel like you would like to see happen in the future, nothing we're doing here tonight would be irrevocable. It's just really a matter of, do you want to put some wheels in motion to look at alternatives with the building, or you prefer to just get some interim facilities for us to use, whether it's from the library or rented, or trailers for that matter, and push us off into the future?
Well, I'm sorry, you were cut off, Roxanne. You were going to say something earlier.
Yeah, I'd like to reach a consensus about what we're going to do in the interim before we talk about more permanent plans. And I think I heard 2 people already say that they would like the town manager to explore the option of using the library. I would say I'm in agreement with that. I would rather work with a fellow government entity than someone private. I think they're going to be more flexible about if we're able to move out sooner. We wouldn't be trapped into a long-term lease, et cetera. So as to a temporary place for us to function, I think I would be the third person, then the third vote to say to the town manager, let's explore the library first.
Yeah, I would like to see kind of an exploration of all the different options, but I agree. I think the library could also be the most expeditious to get a functioning town hall that people could go into and actually work on their permits and ask their questions.
Well, I'm fine with that. Just to get things going here, assuming that Roger can come to a favorable agreement with the library board. If not, we'll have to look at the other options, but and that'll have to be decided at the next meeting, I suppose. But
Well, we'll try to reach out to Cletus and the appropriate people at the library and have a conversation with them and see if we can at least generate a term sheet.
Yes.
Not necessarily a lease, but a term sheet for the council to consider at your next meeting.
kind of a letter of intent sort of thing.
Right.
But I think it's good to keep the eye on the final solution to think what we're going to do in the long term.
Well, that's right. I think everybody should be, all five of us should be thinking about that simultaneously. I mean, that decision is going to have to be made shortly, based on what Roger just told us about how FEMA operates. So we can agree on the short term, but we really have to be thinking quickly on the long term as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Roger, if you could keep us abreast as to where we are as far as the insurance process is on the current town hall building, and how that would correlate with FEMA and what they would reimburse, because I know maybe it's different because it's commercial, but when you get things from FEMA, it's based on what you get from your insurance, so I don't know how that would play in. So I'd like to get some more information on that if you could, to help. I don't want to make a decision to find out it's going to cost us some money in the end. So any information you can give us as far as a process with the insurance on our building and how that would relate to what FEMA would then potentially give us.
It's a little bit of a chicken and egg type concept, just so you're prepared. So we'll get a settlement from our insurance company for town hall. That's X number of dollars. I don't know what that number is yet. They're still evaluating it. Until we bid a project to replace town hall with something, you really don't have something to go to FEMA with that they're going to really, react with firmness about until they see it. So we say, okay, well, let's just say, for example, if we were to proceed and say, look, we're going to put the board cab footprint on town hall property, and we bid that, and we got a price of X, they would be looking at X minus the insurance proceeds, yields a number, and they would then come back to us and say, okay, of that number, we fund 100% of it, or 80% of it, or some percentage of it, and then the town would have to, assuming it wasn't 100%, decide if it wanted to pay the difference. So that's the normal way it kind of progresses. If you just say, well, I have an insurance proceeds of X, and I think our building will cost Y, they're less reluctant to sort of make a commitment because that number could change once you bid it. So it's a little harder for them to sort of get their teeth into the issue. But we can proceed however you're most comfortable.
Roger, would you take a second? Obviously, number one, design a new facility on current site is self-explanatory. Number two, rebuild existing building on current site, self-explanatory. Would you help folks who or haven't been watching this closely, help explain what your intent is behind number three? Obviously, we have a design. It's shovel-ready, the Bay Oaks facility. You want to talk about some of the advantages of using a building that's already been designed and is shovel-ready in terms of the savings and the potential for success with that dynamic? Because I think that's something that I think you need to communicate better to the public as to why you're thinking about that.
Well, you have basically a 13,000 square foot building under air that's permit ready, fully designed, that if the council were inclined, we could put out to bid and see what the price would be to build that building on either the town hall property or perhaps, have some conversations with the Fort Myers Beach Fire Control District about a government complex on the overall Tops property. Maybe that will work out, or maybe it wouldn't. Once we got a bid in, we could then do that exercise with the insurance company and FEMA and see how that would play out. And then if the council was ready at that point, they could award a contract. Before you award the contract, you haven't done anything irrevocable. So for purposes of bidding, it's not like we're saying, well, we want to build this building in Ohio or Indiana. Obviously, that would change the bid a whole lot, but say you want to do it on a property, this property or the property immediately next to it, it's not going to really change the price that much. The only difference would be the existing site conditions, really. And, obviously on our property, you would have to tear down the existing building to build a new building. On the Tops property, you would perhaps have a little less preparatory work.
So is the advantage primarily speed?
Well, you're looking at, 14 to 18 months if you decided to move forward. So whenever you start that, it's going to take you 14 to 18 months. Whereas if you did option 1 or 2 on this list under G, one would take the longest, 2 would take the second longest. So, it's just really a matter of if, the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to have something. The more you wait for whatever reason, obviously, the longer it will take.
So this is not just the design for Bayeux, but you're already kind of in the queue for some of the materials like cement and things, weren't you?
Say again?
Weren't you already in the queue for some things like concrete and?
Well, we not necessarily for this site per se, but we did queue up like concrete for the Bayeux entrance and for Bayside Park when we finished that. So yes, but not for this.
Okay. And if we're doing this analysis to compare these different things, can we also maybe include trying to acquire the Astera commercial building?
Well, of course, that's a separate conversation. That might be item 7 on this list.
I would prefer not to look at that as a permanent home for Town Hall. The island is divided into areas, and we have what's called the civic center of the town, which is where the new fire department is going to be. And we already own property where our Town Hall currently sits that is part of the civic center of the town, and I think the Town Hall should remain there in the civic center.
Okay. Well, there'll be plenty more discussion about this item, but number 1 is temporary housing and number 2 is permanent. Okay, we'll move on. Final public comment. Is there anybody? Oh, there's some hands. Ma'am?
I just wanted to...
No, ma'am, come up to the podium. State your name.
Hi, Mary Shields, 619 Dakota Avenue.
Okay, Mary.
And I was just wondering, our house was completely destroyed in this, so have you heard any word from FEMA on any trailer availability or when any of that would happen? And my second question is, since we're starting over from probably more than 90% of our island being destroyed, is there any talk about building our island back green? We have plenty of wind and we have plenty of sun and we have plenty of water. Is there any chance that our island could be a green island once we bring it back?
Okay, thank you. We'll address those. Yes, sir. Patrick. Yeah.
Just on the last...
Identify yourself, please. Identify yourself.
Legion Terrace.
That's right.
Is it right?
You did say it right.
In France. Town hall replacement options. One thing I want to do is I'd like to have more public comment from it. Obviously, people are just looking at this for the first time. And also, like the cost analysis should be nice to have on here and how much it would cost to be replaced. And I just think it'd be more information to have, if we're going to do this right, that we make sure that we look at the cost analysis of every one of these and then put it out to the public so we all can discuss it too. And it's just not something that Roger dreams up or somebody dreams up in some tent somewhere. So I just want to make sure that, if we see this, it would be in the next month. That way people can get a view of it and understanding. And I think because it was brought up and why it was brought up on this topic today, and I'm guessing it's just as an idea. Here's a heads up, these are the things that are coming forth, right? I didn't think you guys were going to, I thought at first you guys were going to try to negotiate this deal. So I just want to say thank you for not, and then also don't forget the cost analysis. And I also love the idea about the library. Thank you very much, and also for keeping the Civic Center. So thank you guys, and also lastly, thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I understand how difficult it would be to be in your position, and I pray for it.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Kazi.
Cash is Upton, 7950 is Terra Boulevard. Again, I've been on the island my whole life. Just reiterating my point from last week, this island needs to keep the codes in place and made us a town to begin with. We don't need a natural disaster to allow these big businesses and construction companies to come in and make this the Hyatts and Marriotts. This is a small island. The individuals moved here for that. Second thing is, I do want to talk about the safety of the island. Before we were allowed on island, I did make it on island, and I brought one of my friends, who's Beach Boys AC, a bunch of AC parts to fix houses in the Buccaneer area, where we had extra generators to set up AC units to start opening up these houses so that there was minimal damage. I was sworn by 8 cops. I presented my ID, and they took a picture of it. They told me I could remain on that property, and as soon as that was done, I had to leave the island. I said, officers, is there any way you can take me directly across the street to my house to save some of my personal property? They told me I would be arrested, okay? Now, I am an island resident, have been my whole life. That's how I was treated. Now, I feel until water, sewer, and electric's up, anyone that's not there for work or a person that owns or rents on the island deserves to have a trespassing and be arrested. It is unreal that the day that we were opened up, everyone was allowed on, and they're still down there. I have to be careful with how I quote this, but we know our island, and unfortunately, we're not a very diverse island. When I see a truck with 8 people that definitely don't look like they belong there, and there's no trailer and no equipment hooked up to it, it throws red flags to me. So I don't know if there's any way that we can get Lee County to be really sticklers on trespassing, and that's on the entire island, or if we can start actually using our hurricane passes. Because it's ridiculous that an individual, myself, who's lived on island my whole life, got sworn by 8 cops while I'm trying to help out the community and help out homes, yet there's people down there looting, and they're basically getting waved at. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Cassie. Anyone else? Pardon me?
I was telling you.
Oh, okay, I get you. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, yes, sir. Another bite at the apple, Mike? All right.
Mike's back again, 15 Palmview. Guys, and I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but you know, we spent a lot of time talking about City Hall, which is fine. You know, temporary offices in the library are fine, or FEMA trailers or whatever. But I would really like, based on what was said in the last town hall meeting, what other towns do on permitting and, you know, to fast track stuff, why don't one of the members right here in this meeting right now make a motion to fast track the permitting process, at least for the electrical systems. Let an electrician walk in, get a permit, walk out with a permit to put in a new meter base, new 200 amp service, and do, you know, repairs, whether it's, you know, put a hookup for a motorhome or whatever. I mean, these guys are licensed in Florida. You know, this isn't a thing where they're regrading the lot, changing, you know, structures, anything. It should be straightforward. That should be easy.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Town manager's items.
Okay, so I just wanted to circle back to the 50% rule. Is Jason Green still around? I think he is. Okay. Jason has been looking at this issue, and I had a conversation with Lee County today to see if they had reached any decisions about how they were going to handle this issue. I think there's something to be said for consistency among Lee County and the municipalities to try to do it the same. They said that they would be reaching their decision in approximately 2 weeks. I know there are a lot of people here who are very anxious about that decision. So I'm going to ask Jason just to give you a quick update about where we are in the event that you feel like you don't want to wait and see what Lee County and the other municipalities are doing, and you want to proceed on our own here and now.
Just to clarify, for those of you that are still remaining, what they're talking about are the two different values that were stated earlier, right? The one,
Well, it's that, and there are other elements to this. I mean, that's sort of what kicked off the issue when people saw the two different values.
Right.
But there's issues about, do you include the prior work within a certain period of time as part of that? Do you conclude hardening as something that you don't include? And so it's more than just purely, do we use number A or B?
okay.
But so let Jason, if you would, indulge him a few minutes, and he'll explain to you what I believe is the approach we're trying to take is, I think, favorable, but you can judge it for yourself.
Sure. Jason Green, Community Development. Steve, the building official, I have been able to look into that LIPA letter that we talked about on Thursday. So essentially what they've done is they've updated, I believe, the value of the structure based on, I think it was market value is what they're calling it. So to Roger's point, previously there was another place on the LIPA website that we would find and use. What we're going to do moving forward with this, after this disaster, is that letter that they published and attached, it looks like to every parcel, as an updated value for the structure. We'll use that number plus 20%. And that's per our code and our regulations, using that market value plus 20%. Now, there is no cumulative amount in Fort Myers Beach at this point. In 2017, you ended the 5-year cumulative, which would have had to keep track of, to Roger's point, if you got permits a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we would have added that up. We don't have that now. So right now, as of today moving forward, it's that number plus 20%, and then your 50% is that number cut in half. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, one kind of question, because I've heard, we had one person from the public say that the actual sheet from LIPA has changed, and they changed the titles on the values. So sometimes pinning it to something, if that thing is not set in stone, might make it difficult.
And I can't speak to that because obviously we don't control that. But yes, there's
I
other
would
ways
just say
to
we
go
would
about
use the latest one.
We'll use whatever, yes,
whatever the latest number is that they prepare. So if they gave out one 2 weeks ago and they gave out one 2 weeks later.
But it doesn't even change the titles of the numbers.
Yeah, she called the newest one market value, so I think that's consistent with what Jason's
So our
talking
code
about.
says we use market value,
And that's the higher of the two.
it's assessment plus 20, blah, blah, blah. So it's that number plus 20%, and then you take half of that.
Now, do you have any idea what the other municipalities are doing?
Well, everybody's different because they all adopt different local regulations. So some have less than 50%, some have cumulative, and that cumulative could be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years.
Now, do you know what value they're using, though?
It depends on what they adopt in their code. And so ours is using that market value plus the 20%.
Jason, is it fair, I hate to overgeneralize, but is it fair to say by selecting market value plus 20%, the town of Fort Myers Beach is choosing the most favorable options for homeowners to rebuild on the island?
I would say based on the previous question, also based on other jurisdictions, it's about as favorable as you can get.
Thank you.
Can I just add one other thing? Besides what Jason described, we can also not include hardening if the council wants to move in that direction.
So those are all philosophical, or policy decisions that we've kicked around for several years about how to address 50%. One of the things you can do is I was before the storm, we were drafting some policies to present to you, and we were talking about doing less than 50%, say 49, because there's bonus points in CRS for doing less than 50, but exempting things like hardening of putting in hurricane glass and other things. So those are, or shutters or what have you. Those are policy decisions that you can adjust and make.
And my advice to you is to encourage people to harden, so therefore, if it doesn't become a situation where I'm afraid I'm going to go over the 50%, if I harden, I won't harden, we want to encourage them to harden.
Yeah. Right, there's a bunch of building codes, and Steve could speak to this, but my familiarity with it is replacing windows. There's a whole other trigger in the building code about whether you got to replace all your windows or some of them, right? That may be separate or related to the 50% of the total structure value. Sometimes the numbers work out where you have to do all the windows but not the whole structure. There's a whole bunch of ways that this could go. But yes, I would encourage hardening.
And so the idea was just, let's say that on the off chance someone had damage to their house over here in the last month. So that when they would redo the house in the 50% rule, that we're saying that roof, windows, doors, hurricane doors would not be applied to the...
No, today they count. You can change policy to set your numbers to...
But the suggestion is, in exchange for making the number lower than 50%, we say those elements are not part of the calculation. Hardening.
You could change policy and set that, yes. I'm here to encourage people to be careful of their numbers and make sure, don't make a mistake of going to 49.9% and wishing that you would have really been safer, right? So I got to always promote safety first. But I think there's going to be a lot of cases where you're in that 35% that it makes sense for them to just do the improvements and do them the best that they can.
Jason, maybe you can help me, and I'm a little bit confused, because Roger, you'd said that you're waiting to hear from the county for continuity, and I agree with that, but then you're kind of suggesting that we're doing the market value plus the 20%. So
what I'm saying, I want to be clear about this. Let's make believe Hurricane Ian did hit, and someone came in just walking off the street and decided to improve their property. What Jason is telling you is what we would apply.
Okay.
Okay?
Now it makes sense.
So now the question is, do we continue to apply that, which we can do going forward with or without the hardening, or do we wait and see what other folks are doing? If you're ready to make a decision today, just like you did with the RV discussion, you could say, starting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, apply that, and we will apply that to people who inquire of us, what is our standard for the 50% rule?
Well, if I may ask you one more question, I think it was Albert, I don't remember your last name, but what's to keep us from using what he said to me sounded very simple as far as a square footage calculation versus all this other stuff. If there's a way to do just a simple square footage to make it even easier, is that a viable solution for the town?
So that number can be your cost sheet and how you get to that number. That's between you and your contractor, right? And as long as it's within reason of market value. So Lee County has a residential value calculator that they have on their website. And we actually have used that in the past for small projects, for additions, things that didn't seem to be approaching that 50%, just as a number to back check it, right? And so one of the issues is, I haven't looked at that calculator on their website in a while, but it used to be 2015 values. And I can tell you, before the storm, we were for 4 years arguing with the State Floodplain Management Office over a visit that they did, questioning a 50% value permit, 4 of them. And one of those was specifically related to using that calculator. And they said, you can't use that. And our argument was, Lee County's been using it. You're not telling them not to use it. And unfortunately, we were caught up in this back and forth of, yeah, but you can't use it. The values are old, blah, blah, blah. So we basically aren't using that for that purpose. But it's also, it depends on the age of the numbers. So your contractor can go and use other numbers and come up with an approximate number.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how we can get to the simplest solution for people. There's been a lot of talk about $11 an hour if you're doing it yourself, if you're doing the self-GC, if you're doing...
Yes.
What's the easiest, simplest path that will keep us within specs of what we need to be with FEMA to be able to make it easier for a person that doesn't understand this and is overwhelmed with it, that here's a simple number. If your house is 1,000 square feet and it's $60 a square foot, this is what it's going to cost you to rebuild that house.
Yeah, the problem with that is, I don't know how...
I'm just using that number.
I get your point, and that's part of the problem, right? So if the dollar amount changes so much because we have houses that we see the cost, we know what the actual cost of construction is, and it's $600 a square foot. And then there's houses that are $150 a square feet, and I have no idea what the values are at this point, right, with materials. But that's the challenge of what is a standard? It depends on the level of trim and all these other things that you're putting in. So that's why it's really, when you do it yourself, you still have to get not a contractor, but all your subs, you have to get the proposals from them, and it has a dollar amount that they're going to do that work for, and that goes into your packet to show that you're less than or over 50%. So even if you're doing the work yourself, or doing some of it, you're still going to have subs. Like an owner builder would still not necessarily do their electrical work. They would have an electrical contractor. They're just managing it themselves. They're still going to have a quote from an electrical contractor to do that work.
Well, and I understand that. I'm still struggling with what the gentleman said.
And I understand it. My point is, we've been already kicked around for about 4 years for trying to use that, and frankly,
Well, I think I want to be clear about this. if you want to set a number as a council, set a number, and we'll use that number. And what happens, as a result of that with FEMA, happens as a result of that with FEMA. We're trying to protect the town's insurance rating, and not at the expense of someone who's, at 51% not going to amount from being able to rebuild. But if you want to take, perhaps a more simplified approach, in all honesty, that's fine. We can do that. It's separate from the discussion of, do we use this format? Now it's how the person does the calculation. That's that's step 2 of this.
Right.
But if you want to direct us to say, take my birthday, multiply it by 7, and divide it by the number of kids we have, we'll use that number.
I understand that, the risk management part of it from FEMA, but I guess I'm trying to get to, how do we get that answered? How do we get FEMA in the room to ask them a specific question of, if we did this, what could be the results? I mean, in order for us to give people answers, we got to know what.
Because the guidance that they give us in the packet we have is essentially directly from FEMA, what they tell you to use and give you. And there's a sheet in there in the packet that we have that tells you what is included and what is not included, right? So all of your appliances, things that aren't fixed, aren't included. Counters, flooring, those things are included. It's very specific about what's included. So I think it's pretty detailed of what the direction from, I would say, FEMA from the policy is. I don't want to use this as a scare tactic, but Roger's right about the CRS, but there's another step to that. Participating, it's not just the CRS. You tomorrow could decide as a council, we're not going to do the CRS program. We don't care about the discounted and flood insurance. But you do have to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program from a regulatory standpoint. We have to enforce the maps. We have to enforce our regulations. If we are found and fail to do that, and you get suspended as a community, that means no mortgages can be issued, because mortgages are federally backed, have to have flood insurance. So the reality of this is it's a much, much bigger worst case scenario, and I think that would be critically harming to the community 2 years from now if that happens. And having gone through 4 years with the state and them kicking us around telling us you can't use these numbers and you're going to have to go back and tell these homeowners that they have to tear it out, or we've been dealing with that for 4 years, and I really don't want to do that, frankly, again, if we can help it. I understand your issue.
No, that makes sense, and I agree that these are 2 separate issues. It was just something for me to try to wrap my head around a little bit.
Yep, the calculation is a little bit different than, the formula of the 50% is different than how you get to that 50%.
So Councilor Allerton, and I'm listening very closely to what you're saying, and I don't want to, give any impression that I'm not taking what you're saying and what the gentleman said very seriously. I don't have any, if we want to use the county's way of calculating what it is, $65 a square foot, for example, that was mentioned, then we need to be careful that the first part is also follows the county too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you think that there's merit in, using this, so if we're going to be sort of, have to defend ourselves with FEMA, I want to be in a room with a lot of people that we're following what a lot of other folks are doing. So that would mean that you would have to wait and see what the county decides, the 15th plus or minus. Then if you like that, you could then say, okay, well then we could use their calculator or their mathematical way of calculating the 50%, because we're using their rules up front. We're not cherry picking the part we like versus the part we don't like. You got to kind of take both parts. So if you want to use their flat rate, we can look at that, but then I would encourage you to also look at how they calculate the 50% also, and not have a hybrid.
No, that certainly makes sense. I'm just, is the county aware of what you both just said earlier, that this is what we would do before EN?
Well, I think we're hoping that they're getting the same input concerns that we all heard tonight and last week. And that is that the vast majority of people, given an option, would like to be able to qualify under the 50% rule and rebuild their structure, at the old height. We can get that, right? Be able to rebuild their structure under the old codes. We get that. So, all we're trying to say is that from protecting the town, and not necessarily, and that's what I do, and I think that's what John does, and I think that's what our staff does. We don't always pick the most expedient method. We don't necessarily pick the method that people like. We pick what we think best protects the town. So if you're comfortable with Jason saying, with that comes a little bit perhaps more complicated calculation on the value. If you don't have to decide that today. You can say, well, let's wait and see what the county does, and then I can decide that. That's an option, and I think that's a good option. Some people won't be happy because they wanted to know the answer 2 weeks ago. But that's an option, and you can see what they're doing and perhaps what other cities are doing once they see what the county is doing, and then decide what you all want to do. But if you want to say, hey, we have people here, they're impatient, they're anxious, they're nervous, they're whatever, we have to solve this here and now today,
So
that's
just,
what we'll do.
that's a fair point. So just so I'm clear, no other municipality in a similar situation to Fort Myers Beach has yet to make a formal decision? Is that fair to say?
No, I would say every jurisdiction's different because what you define and what you use for that substantial damage threshold essentially is up to you. Let's say there's a minimum that you have to meet for FEMA standard, but everything else, a higher standard, every community is a little bit different.
So I guess my question, Jason, is if we made a decision this evening that was incongruent with what the county decides, does that expose us to any risk?
No, what would make a difference is if you made a decision that was not consistent with your current code.
Okay.
I would suggest doing actions, as John would tell you what those rules are, to change those codes. That takes time. And if you want it to reflect for simplicity, I guess because of what the county said or does, then we'd have to wait, change, and then do that. What I wouldn't suggest is doing something different from your codes today, because we would have to wait. You'd have to change and adopt something else, and then, because that's where we'll get in trouble, is when they come down and they look, they say, did you comply with your own our regulations, national minimums, and whatever you've adopted locally?
So you, Jason Green, not trying to put words in your mouth, you're comfortable with us making a decision of market value plus 20% tonight? You're comfortable with that, given your expertise and background?
Working with Steve, the building official, and our staff, we've talked about LIPA, County Property Appraisers, has published this letter. They've established a number for the structure, and our code calls out for that number for the structure plus 20% to be used, half of that.
Thank you.
Okay,
And just have another point, another kind of question, because I know I'm kind of really interested in this idea of lowering the percentage, but like exempting hardening.
Yes.
Now, is that done many places? Is this?
I think it's a great idea, and I want us to do it. We just haven't had time, and then all of a sudden the storm came.
Is there precedent, or are there other communities that are doing it that way?
Yeah, some do, some try it, some do. The less than 50% is kind of a way to get your extra points, but also in what they've seen is it makes sense because you want to encourage the right types of improvements. It depends on the makeup of your community.
Because I remember 10, 12 years ago, you had 50% for 5 years, but all the things that were hardening, windows and roofs, you had for a year, and then it rolled off, which sounded like a real complicated calculation.
Yeah, the town's gone through several versions of the cumulative. I think you went from 5 to 3 and then went to the occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been, yes, during that period it was difficult to calculate because it was a moving target.
But I do agree with the point that, if you're making it very difficult, if people have to go cheap, then they're probably not going to put in the windows and maybe put in a cheaper roof to try to get into that.
Well, I mean, honestly, these numbers are, we're seeing a lot of some lower numbers, but we're seeing a lot of much higher numbers. There's one we checked yesterday that was triple from what it was 2 weeks ago for whatever reason. So I don't know where their basis comes from.
The market rate numbers?
Yeah, that market rate number. If you looked on LIPA's website and you found this parcel, it was 101,000, and then this letter came out and it was 320,000 plus 20%.
Now, when we talked, you were going to ask them about their methodologies and whether those methodologies were consistent
It's an
with FEMA?
update to the structural value. I don't know exactly how they made the sausage. I know that's just the number they published, so we're going with that. And to your point, Councilman, I think, again, making the sausage behind the scenes, there's things that we do to try to streamline some of the permitting. If you're at 10 or 15%, there's certain forms we're not going to make you fill out in detail. We can use this residential calculator as a way to back check to make sure we understand that you're far away from that 50%. So there's some things that we are doing internally to help that process. I didn't want to get in the weeds unless you wanted to. So.
But obviously, if you're 49, we have to look at it a lot closer.
Well, and so ironically, we are fielding a lot of questions about, there's a lot of people have a rider on their insurance that is for improvements to meet new codes. And so I think you're going to see, if people around the town have that, you're going to see a lot of trying to get over 50%. So they can trigger that benefit, that extra money to elevate and raise the structure versus fighting to get under the 50% to maintain.
That's
So
the
you're gonna see
increased cost of compliance rider?
Yes, ICC rider, the increased cost of compliance. I have it at my house, and we've fielded many calls about that, asking about that. That's between you and insurance, but yes, that's in theory would cover elevation and some other things.
So just to bring this full circle, at the end of the day, as all decisions that we make, I think you all know me well enough to know I don't make decisions between meetings unless they absolutely have to be made and can't wait to a council meeting. So we, the staff, have not made a decision on this. We're doing research, we're trying to monitor what other people are doing, bring it to you so that you could direct us what you want us to do. I think if you want to stick with what you got, and you can change the code to increase or not to allow for hardening or not, it's up to you. But I do need you to understand that when someone's approaching the cutoff, whatever it winds up being, we have to take a harder look at that versus a case where someone's way away from that. We're not really worrying that the calculation method we would happen to be using would take them over the top.
So Roger, are you looking for direction this evening for us to?
I'm just trying to be I'm responding to the impression I got from one or two of the speakers that, sort of we're not doing our job by giving them a finite answer today. So if you want to give a finite answer today, of course, this is the meeting to do it at.
So
if you want to wait and see what the county does, then you're looking at the week of the 15th. It's up to you.
So does anyone have an interest this evening in directing Roger to direct the community development staff to use the LIPA plus 20%? Is that what we're talking about?
That's our current method.
I would say comply with our current regulations.
Just one quick question on that. So say we decided to move forward with that tonight, would that affect any homeowner's right to appeal their value?
No, there's still other methods. I think Steve talked about last meeting about a private appraisal that would have to appraise what the value of the structure was pre-storm. And so there's some math in there of depreciation, all this other stuff that they have to do. I don't know if they're going to find
That's not a new appeal, though. Just to be clear,
it's not an appeal.
The appeal is to pay a private appraiser to do a calculation.
Right. I don't know how many appraisers are going to come out and try to recreate the structure by pictures and value. So that's why we were trying to use the most, friendly version that we can at this point.
So I ask again, does anyone wish to make that motion right now to direct Roger to use that LIPA plus 20%?
I don't want to make the motion, but I have something to say. I've been waiting for a turn. This whole discussion, I think, has been all angled about people who are wanting to rebuild the house that they have. And the reason that the FEMA rules exist is because we are in a flood zone. It's not a good idea to have a house on the ground. I had a house on the ground. I could be trying to do this. I could be trying to fix my house under the 50% rule. It's not a good idea. That's the reason the FEMA rules exist. And we're spending a lot of time trying to make this easier for everybody when maybe you're not making a wise decision to do this. I'm just asking people to step back and think before you do this. I understand your motivations. It's faster to do it this way than to build a new house. It's cheaper than to build a new house. But is it a good idea to endanger you and your family or your grandchildren in the future? So I'm not so sure that making it super easy for everybody to get around 50% really should be our motivation. I think people should really be thinking about, is my house a safe place to rebuild? There's a reason for this rule. We live in a flood zone. We are on an island that was inundated by multiple feet of water. I would not feel comfortable living in my house on the ground anymore. And I'm asking everybody to really seriously consider before you go down this path. It may be faster, it may be cheaper, but it's probably not wise. I understand it's up to them, but I haven't heard anybody saying this out loud. What I've heard over and over again is, let's make it easier, let's make it simpler. And yes, it's always good for things to be easy and simple, but we're bypassing that step of saying to everybody, we want you to think about this. I'm just asking everybody to think about it. I'm not telling you the decision to make, but people have stopped saying that. Everybody's rushing in to say, I want to rebuild my house on the ground, and it probably is not a wise idea. So I just felt the need that somebody say that, because nobody's been saying that.
And if you don't mind, I just want to add to that. I wish people would take into consideration the insurance ramifications when making those decisions. And for you, there may be some grandfathering in, but think about the resale value of that house. I know I have many friends that have tried to sell houses that are pre-firm structures that are grandfathered in. When they change ownership, it quadruples. It goes from $2,000 to $10,000, and the rates are going to go up and up and up. So, to your point, Vice Mayor, you can get a lot of this extra cost back within 5 to 7 years pretty easily, or will you be able to sell that house because the value of the cost of the insurance is more than the mortgage.
And I agree with the Vice Mayor says that to a point, but there are these other, but you really, when someone's looking at a way to as quickly and as cheaply as possible get their life back, a lot of people rebuilding, it's out of their range. I know a lot of neighbors and good friends of mine, the idea of spending at a minimum probably $700,000-800,000 to build
And
a
I'm
new
one of
house
those people.
up. Yes,
that it's probably out of my range.
That it's out of the range. But I would also say that, when somebody's looking at it and they're looking at this saying this is the cheapest way to go, I think you really can't say that unless you look at your flood insurance. See if you have this ICC rider that can pay part of the cost anyway of raising your house up the floodplain. And the other thing is future flood insurance. Because, if the past is any indication of what's happening with flood insurance rates, they are going up, and they're going up for people who are not at the BFE.
Yeah, the resale part of it's what's going to kill a lot of transactions, honestly, because of the insurance. So, insurance people are inundated, but maybe ask one if you're close with one to say, what would the insurance be for a different owner if my house was kept where it's at, and see what they say, because I think that'll drive a lot of decisions.
And I also don't think we're not really loosening the 50% rule. The 50% rule is still there, and I think it does set a pretty high bar to be able to fix a lot of these houses within that rule. Because when a house is gutted, when there's nothing left inside, and even if it's structurally sound, trying to get that house redone at 50% with a 50% rule would be a formidable task.
Anything else, Roger?
No, all I'm going to say is, and I don't know if Jason said these words, but, FEMA and the flood insurance policy, and a lot of their principles and policies that they're trying to implement are all about trying to prevent recurring losses. So a property that flooded out in Storm A won't flood out again in Storm B. And that's what a lot of their policies are written about. They say, look, you may have gotten to our pocket the first time, and we'll pay up, but we don't want to pay up twice.
Well, and that's a great point. I forgot to mention that. If you've had a structure and you're thinking about this 50% rule, but you've been flooded and had a claim before, you're a repetitive loss structure, reach out to us, reach out to me, whoever, Steve, and let's try to get you in touch and see if there's some grant opportunities for repetitive loss structures. I think that's an important thing to at least try to help people.
Jason, you'll be there Thursday evening at the meeting?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, you can answer more questions there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I think we can wrap this up. I think because no one has made a motion, maybe we leave it like this. Maybe we let the public know that we are leaning towards market value plus 20%. That's the inclination of the town and the council, but we're waiting for more direction from the county.
Fair enough. Okay, Town Attorney. Thank you, Jason.
Just one overall comment, and then I'm done. You know, we're talking about a lot of things to try and accommodate and make things easier for people, and that's what we should be doing. But, you know, it's my job, unfortunately, to sometimes say, you know, we have to stay within the lines. And you know, the subject matter we just discussed about, that you all just discussed, is one of those examples where, you know, we're trying to do everything we can to make it easier for people to be able to rebuild, but we also need to be sensitive to the issue of FEMA compliance, because we don't want to put people and the town as a whole in jeopardy down the road when FEMA does an audit and says, well, you all did it all wrong, and you know, all these homes aren't you know, to code, or so. That's always in the back of our mind. It needs to be in the back of our mind. We're striving to do everything we can as quickly as we can to make it easy as possible. But again, we have to stay within the lines that sometimes aren't created by the town. They're created by other agencies that are imposed upon us.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move on. Councilman items and reports. Councilman Alves, we'll start with you.
Yeah, a couple of things that we covered. The one that was on my list already. Sorry. We covered, I think, the 50-50 pretty heavily, and I think people understand where we're leaning anyway. Another thing that we heard tonight a lot was the access to the island, as well as the permitting, and obviously getting information out. One of the things that I would like to see, and ask my fellow councilors if they would be amenable to this, is since we have to redo the state of emergency every 7 days, I would like to see us meet like this every 7 days. I think these are very informative. I think we get a lot of questions. As we know through this so far, there's been a lot of things that change hourly, daily, by the minute. I think the more that we can get in front of the public and inform them of what we have learned. I mean, you heard the round of applause just for Christy today. You know, on the water, I think it's a very positive step forward for the community, and I'd really like to see us meet once a week at least to get through this debris removal process or time period with the FEMA money. So I'll kind of throw that out there to my fellow councilors to see if that's something that they would be willing to do, because I'm certainly willing to do it. I don't care what time it is or what day it is.
Isn't that kind of required? Can we renew that?
Well, the way that we've that you wrote your ordinance, because it is by ordinance, is it gives the manager, actually in order, it gives the mayor, it gives the vice mayor, and then the manager the ability to extend it in 7-day increments if you can't have a quorum or there's other circumstances that don't allow you to meet.
And I certainly understand that. I guess what I'm asking is, does it say anywhere that we can't meet every week?
No, not at all. So as I said, I think that what my thought process, unless you decide to meet every week, would be for the mayor to extend it on the off weeks, and we would put the extension and the ratification on the first and second and third Monday of the month for you all to approve.
Well, I'll reiterate. I think I'd like to see us meet every week. We've got a lot of things to discuss with permitting.
I'll tell you, Dan, I agree too. I don't have a problem meeting every week.
And I agree as well. I just wonder, just because this is a tough location for the public, through nobody's fault. It's just tough out there, and we have disparate people all over this Southwest Florida right now. Might I suggest that we have a lot of experience doing this during COVID. I wonder if we potentially could do this a Zoom call. That way people can watch live. Right now people can't watch this meeting live. They could watch it live, they could participate, and the Zoom, we got relatively used to the Zoom dynamic. In those interim times that Councilor Allers is suggesting, which I support, I wonder if we could potentially consider doing that via Zoom, so to make it more convenient for the public, quite frankly, because it's tough for people to get here.
Was that